Chapter 3742. Fan Shuang, 10 Swordsmen, I'm giving you one last order. Spread the news of Nangong Ying and Murong Rui's deaths. The person who killed them is Zhuowen. Today, I'll be leaving Yunjin Hill for Ascension Sect. When the news of my departure spreads, the Nangong and Murong families will come for me. They won't care about Yunjin Hill anymore. After Zhuowen finished speaking to Fan Shuang, 10 Swordsmen, and the rest, he took out the divine boat and left Yunjin Hill City. Fan Shuang, 10 Swordsmen, and the rest looked at Zhuowen, who was already far away. Are we really going to reveal Master's whereabouts to the Nangong and Murong families? One sword frowned and asked hesitantly. This is Master's last order. We can only do this. Even if we don't do this, when the Nangong and Murong families come to Yunjin Hill, they will force Master to tell us. The reason why Manor Lord is doing this is to protect everyone in Yunjin region. Murong Rui is Murong Fugue's father. When Murong Fugue was killed, he paid the price to the Nangong family and planned to massacre the city. Now that Murong Rui is dead, when the Murong family finds out who the murderer is, they won't be so bored as to vent their anger on Yunjin Hill. Yunjin Hill is under the Nangong family's jurisdiction. The Nangong family won't do something like massacring a city in their own territory. Fan Shuang sighed softly. She was smart to begin with. From Zhuowen's words, she had already understood what Zhuowen meant. Lu Yichuan was being supported by 10 swordsmen. Although his injuries had not fully healed, he was much more clear-headed. Before Zhuowen left, he had also sent a message to Jian Wushuang, telling Jian Wushuang to postpone his challenge to Nangong Wuji. After Jian Wushuang joined the Ascension sect and cultivated there for a while, he would contact Jian Wushuang again. Brother Zhua, you must get through this, Lu Yichuan mumbled to himself. One day after Zhuowen left, the news of Nangong Ying and Murong Rui's deaths reached the Nangong and Murong families. In a magnificent main hall of the Murong family, a middle-aged man smashed the armrest on his right and said coldly, Murong Rui is dead? Who killed him? Below the main hall, a subordinate knelt down and respectfully handed a crystal ball to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man. The crystal ball recorded the battle between Zhuowen, Nangong Ying and Murong Rui. When the middle-aged man saw Zhuowen bring out the half-moon god fire spear, his eyes instantly blazed. Murong Wuji, Murong spear, Murong, and Murongs and Murong. Murong and Murong and was Murong Murong. However, this person was clearly a loose cultivator, yet he possessed such a divine artifact. How could the middle-aged man not be tempted? Pass down the order. Have Elder Ying Yen bring a spirit master to find this person's exact location. Then, kill him and bring back his spirit ring, the middle-aged man said coldly. The subordinate who was kneeling on the ground was stunned. He couldn't help but say, Master, are we really going to send Elder Yichuan? He's second only to you in the Murong family. He's been guarding the family. The middle-aged man's eyes were cold. Didn't you hear what I said? I want you to inform Elder Yichuan. Since this person can kill Murong Rui, other than me, only Elder Yichuan can suppress him. Yes, the subordinate hurriedly replied and left. The same thing happened in the Nangong family. When the Nangong family received the news of Nangong Ying's death, the entire family was shaken. Of course, they also received the same crystal ball and knew that the person who killed Nangong Ying was Zhuowen. The Nangong family's master also sent an elder and a divine spear to pursue Zhuowen. Divine spear was a type of divine spear in the 100 domains. They could use the 8 trigrams to predict the past and future. Of course, most of the divine spear's predictions were very vague. However, using a cultivator's aura to predict a cultivator's current location was a basic ability of a divine spear. Therefore, when many forces were pursuing their enemies, they would bring along a divine spear to pursue them. The success rate was very high. Of course, there were very few divine spears in the 100 domains. Moreover, hiring a divine spear required a large sum of money. In the 100 domains, only large forces had the capital to hire a divine spear to divine various matters. Moreover, the higher the level of the divine spear, the more expensive the appearance fee. Therefore, even large forces would not casually hire a divine spear unless it was a big matter. After all, it was too expensive. However, the Nangong family had only sent out an ordinary elder. Their goal was actually the divine spear of the half-moon. However, they did not plan to fight to the death with Zhuowen. Instead, they secretly followed him and waited for the Murong family to truly fight with Zhuowen. When both sides were injured, they would sit back and reap the benefits. After Zhuowen left the main city, he changed his appearance and rushed towards the Ascension sect. Back then, Elder Yuchi had not only given him a token, but also the exact location of the Ascension sect. The Ascension sect was located in a vast plain to the southeast of the Ji Prefecture governor's residence. There were many cities of various sizes there. With the Ascension sect as the center, they were built in a ring shape in all directions. It was a magnificent sight. Originally, when Elder Yuchi was still around, he had not made up his mind. However, after killing the Nangong family and the Murong family, he knew that if he wanted to cultivate in peace, he would either have to leave the Ji prefecture or join a force. Now, the best choice was the Ascension sect. Moreover, he had grasped too few divine abilities. He was even lacking in visualization diagrams. It would be very difficult for him to gather divine abilities and visualization diagrams that were suitable for him. However, those large forces had developed for countless years. They definitely had many divine abilities and visualization diagrams. He would always be able to pick one that was suitable for him. As for leaving the Ji prefecture, Zhuowen had no plans to do so at the moment. His current strength was still too weak. Even if he left the Ji prefecture, what was the use? Only when he was strong enough would he have the capital to look for Moyan Wushang. In the future, he would also have the capital to face the Niuhua family's clan leader. However, he was too weak now. There was nothing he could do. Therefore, his priority was to increase his cultivation as soon as possible. Boom! Boom! Chapter 3743. The terrifying energy from the explosion spread out like ripples in water. The mountains and rivers within a few thousand miles were flattened. After the explosion gradually subsided, a divine ship suddenly emerged from another part of the forest. The holy ship was huge, and there were more than 10 people on the deck. Their auras were not weak. A middle-aged man with a long beard stood at the front of the deck. He looked to be in his 40s and had a square face. His eyes flashed with a cold light. He was Elder Ingyen, who was sent by the Murong family. He was second only to the master of the Murong family and was a late empty god transformation realm elite. He was much more powerful than Murong Rue. Beside the middle-aged man was an old lady in a long robe. Her face was full of wrinkles and her cheeks were dry. She was a spiritual speaker who was invited by the Murong family. Elder Ingyen relied on the old lady's prediction to find out Zhuowen's exact location. The power of the God Crasher is still so terrifying. I'm afraid he's dead after being hit by it. Elder Ingyen looked indifferent. He had come prepared this time. The God Crasher was a powerful cannon that was specially used to deal with empty God transformation realm elite. The God Crasher that was shot earlier was not cheap. It was enough to kill a beginning stage empty God transformation realm cultivator. Even a middle stage empty God transformation realm cultivator would be severely injured. From Elder Ingyen's point of view, Zhuowen was definitely going to die after being hit by the God Crasher since he was caught off guard. No, Elder Ingyen, he's not dead. His aura is so terrifying. The old lady's face suddenly changed and she quickly reminded Elder Ingyen. Shush! A terrifying sound pierced through the air and came from the ruins below. Upon closer inspection, it was a holy spear that was emitting intense flames. The holy spear was like a rainbow that pierced through the sky. It tore through the surrounding space and headed straight for the holy ship that Elder Ingyen and the rest were on. Elder Ingyen's face changed slightly. However, his face soon turned hot. He took out a blood-red spear from his spiritual ring and threw it at the holy spear below. Boom! The spear and the spear collided and countless sparks exploded. Elder Ingyen then steered the holy ship away from the place. Bang! The blood-colored spear was sent flying. Elder Ingyen took a step forward and caught the blood-colored spear. He noticed that the luster on the surface of the blood-red spear had slightly dimmed, and his pupils couldn't help but shrink a few times. But soon, his gaze became much hotter. Patriarch's guess is indeed correct. The divine spear on this child's body is not an ordinary heaven-crushing Tier 4 divine artifact. Elder Ingyen returned to the deck and looked down at the young man standing in the ruins. This young man was naturally Zhuowen. Zhuowen's expression turned grave. He looked at the blood spear in Elder Ingyen's hand and frowned. Heaven Breaker rank 4 divine artifact? Zhuowen muttered to himself. Naturally, he could tell that the blood spear was not simple. To be able to block the bombardment of the half-moon god fire spear, this blood spear was at least at the heaven-breaking 4th tier. Zhuowen's guess was correct. The blood spear in Elder Ingyen's hand was indeed a heaven-breaking 4th tier divine artifact. However, it was only at the early stage of the heaven-breaking 4th tier. This blood spear was one of the only 2 heaven-breaking 4th tier divine artifacts in the Murong family. It did not belong to Elder Ingyen. Instead, it was specially given to Elder Ingyen to use in order to capture Zhuowen. You're Zhuowen, right? Not only did you not repent after killing a direct descendant of the Murong family, you even dared to kill an elder of the Murong family. You've already committed a heinous crime. Aren't you going to bow down and admit your crimes? Elder Ingyen said in a deep voice. Zhuowen sneered and said, Your Murong family is really willing to spend money. You even took out a heaven-breaking 4th tier divine artifact. Are you here to kill me? Elder Ingyen said indifferently, Ever since you killed a member of the Murong family, you're already a dead man. However, I'll give you a good suggestion. Hand over everything on you and I'll let you die a better death. It won't be so painful. Zhuowen raised the half-moon divine flame spear and said indifferently, That'll depend on whether you have the ability or not. Looks like you're deliberately seeking death. You don't have any more chances. I'll first capture you alive and send you to the Murong family's water prison. I'll let you taste all the torture tools there. After you've tasted all the pain, I'll kill you. Elder Ingyen said coldly. As he said that, Elder Ingyen stomped his right foot and jumped out of the divine ship. He fell towards Zhuowen while holding the blood spear in his hand tightly. He was ready to unleash a terrifying attack. Zhuowen held the half-moon divine flame spear and did not dare to be negligent in the slightest. Elder Ingyen's aura was much stronger than Murong Rui's. Although there was only a difference of 1 small realm between the two, in the heaven-breaking realm, even a difference of 1 small realm was a huge difference in strength. The reason why Zhuowen was able to possess strength that far exceeded his peers was because he cultivated a powerful cultivation technique like the primordial technique. If it were not for the immemorial primordial technique, Zhuowen's battle strength would not be much stronger than those of the same realm. Not only was Elder Ingyen stronger than Murong Rui, but he also used a heaven-breaking level 4 divine weapon and could display the full power of the heaven-breaking level 4 divine weapon. Even if Zhuowen's half-moon divine flame spear was a little higher than the blood spear, Zhuowen did not have much confidence in defeating Elder Ingyen. Unless he used the power of the star weapon fragment that he had just fused with. But that was his final trump card, and he would not use it easily. Bang! Elder Ingyen's speed was extremely fast, and he arrived in front of Zhuowen in an instant. The blood spear shot out, and countless blood shadows enveloped Zhuowen's surroundings. Zhuowen only felt that he was in a foul wind and a rain of blood. It was pungent and nauseating. Break! The divine spear in Zhuowen's hand flung out like a poisonous snake, and the tip of the spear pierced through the air. Instantly, waves of flames spread out like fire snakes coiling together, dispersing the uncomfortable atmosphere created by the blood spear. Rumble! The divine spear and the blood spear collided, and the sound of metal clashing rang out. The entire ruins below exploded. Bang! 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 In just an instant, the two of them had exchanged dozens of blows, and every attack was extremely terrifying. This child really has the aura of the pinnacle of the embryonic god transformation realm, but he can actually use a heaven-breaking level 4 peak divine weapon. Could it be that his shattered godly power is so strong? The more Elder Ingyan fought, the more shocked he became. The instant he fought with Zhuowen, he sensed that Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the pinnacle of the embryonic god transformation realm. Not to mention why Zhuowen had such powerful strength, just the fact that this child could use a heaven-breaking level 4 peak divine weapon as he wished was enough to shock him. Zhuowen, on the other hand, was secretly complaining. After all, his cultivation was too low. Even if the purity of his shattered godly power was very high, it was impossible for him to use the half-moon divine flame spear for a long time. The consumption was too great. If his shattered godly power was exhausted, then he would really be finished. I can't continue to waste my energy like this with this person, I have to end this quickly. Thinking of this, Zhuowen communicated with the pattern on his palm. This pattern contained the power of the fire toad and the purple thorn, and he had already named it the purple toad. The instant Zhuowen mobilized the power of the purple toad, he grabbed the spear with both hands and fiercely threw it at Elder Ingyan. Elder Ingyan's expression changed greatly. He was obviously not prepared for Zhuowen's sudden violent attack, and for a moment, he was somewhat unable to withstand it. He was beaten to the point that he was flustered and continuously retreated. Chapter 3744. Elder Ingyan's expression changed greatly. He sensed a terrifying power rapidly approaching him. When he saw the purple light clearly, he discovered that within the purple light there was actually a purple toad. The strange thing was that the toad's entire body was covered with purple spikes. Elder Ingyan did not even think as he threw the blood spear in his hand towards the toad. His intuition told him that he could not be hit by the purple toad. Otherwise, there would definitely be a huge problem. Gua. But what made Elder Ingyan dumbstruck was that after the purple toad cried out, it actually nimbly dodged his blood spear attack. Then, with a kick of its hind legs, it directly pounced towards Elder Ingyan's face. Poochie! In the instant that the purple toad smashed into Elder Ingyan's face, it immediately started rolling. The purple spikes all over its body were extremely sharp. They completely tore apart Elder Ingyan's face, causing his face to change beyond recognition. After the purple toad did all this, it immediately turned into a purple light and returned to Zhuowen's palm. Elder Ingyan threw away the blood spear and covered his face with both hands as he screamed miserably. Fresh blood flowed down his face without any regard for his life. Even though Elder Ingyan did his best to use shattered godly power to heal the injuries on his face, what made him shocked was that not only did his wounds not heal, they were even spreading out. The purple toad had fused the purple spike and the fire toad's power. Just now, Zhuowen had only used its bleeding effect. As long as one was injured by the purple toad's spikes, it would be very difficult for the wound to heal. It would continue to bleed until the blood ran dry. Zhuowen took advantage of this opportunity and immediately snatched the blood spear. Then, he used his movement technique and instantly flew away. As for the other people on the divine ship, they did not chase after Zhuowen. Instead, they immediately went to Elder Ingyan's side. Elder Ingyan was the strongest person in their group. Even Elder Ingyan was unable to kill Zhuowen. If they went to chase after Zhuowen, wouldn't they be throwing their lives away in vain? The old woman looked at Elder Ing Yan's mangled face, and her expression changed slightly. This is the power of a star weapon fragment. Who exactly is this child? He possesses a star weapon fragment. Looking at Elder Ing Yan's injuries, it should be some kind of astral weapon with bleeding characteristic. Furthermore, it is very powerful. It should be at least a fragment of a second-rank astral weapon. The expressions of the others changed greatly. Star weapon fragments had always appeared in various places of the 100 domains. Even their Murong family had some star weapon fragments, but they were all very small. Moreover, most of them were rank 1 star weapons. There was only one rank 2 star weapon fragment. Star soldiers also had their own corresponding ranks, which were divided into 10 ranks. The first level was the lowest and the 10th level was the highest. In the 100 outer realms, the most numerous were rank 1 astral soldiers. As for the astral soldiers of the first rank and above, they started to become much rarer. Take the governor of the Ji province as an example. There were actually quite a few rank 1 astral soldiers, but rank 2 astral soldiers were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. Only a large faction like the Murong clan had the resources to possess a rank 2 astral soldier, but at most, they only had one. However, this mere loose cultivator in front of them not only possessed a level 4 heaven-crushing divine artifact, but also a level 2 astral weapon fragment. How could this not shock them? If they hadn't investigated Zhuowen's background, they would have even thought that this Zhuowen was a descendant of some large faction that had come here to travel. What should we do next? Everyone looked at the old woman. At this moment, the old woman had clearly become their backbone. This encirclement has failed. With our strength, it's impossible for us to be Zhuowen's match. Let's return to the Murong family first. The old woman smiled bitterly. Everyone looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. They knew that this was the only thing they could do. Even Elder Ing Yan was injured to this extent and almost died. What could they do? If they chased after him, they would just be courting death. When Elder Ing Yan and the others retreated, the people of the Nangong family who were hiding in the dark also slowly retreated. They had witnessed the battle between Zhuowen and Elder Ing Yan. Naturally, they could also see that other than the level 4 heaven-crushing divine artifact, Zhuowen actually had a treasure that was suspected to be a rank 2 star weapon. Even Elder Ing Yan and the others had returned in defeat, let alone them. Therefore, they immediately returned and planned to report this matter to the Nangong family's patriarch. After Zhuowen had left for some distance, he took out another divine ship from his spirit ring and rushed towards the Ascension sect's direction without stopping. He understood that his action of heavily injuring Elder Ing Yan should have completely intimidated the people of the Murong family. They would not easily chase after him. However, he knew that just in case, he had to be more cautious. Moreover, he had used the half-moon divine fire spear and the purple toad consecutively. There was not much broken god power left in his body. He had to adjust his condition. This purple toad's power is really strong. If I were to unleash its full power, Elder Ing Yan would definitely be dead. Zhuowen felt that it was a pity. Because he had used the half-moon divine fire spear, he did not have much broken god power left in his body. Therefore, he was unable to unleash the full power of the purple toad. However, he was very satisfied with the power of the purple toad. Its power was much stronger than the purple thorn and the fire toad. In reality, what Zhuowen did not know was that the purple thorn and the fire toad were merely astral weapon fragments. However, when he merged the two together, the two had undergone a qualitative leap. The fused purple toad had also leveled up to become a rank 2 astral weapon. However, how did the Murong family find out my exact location? Zhuowen's face suddenly turned gloomy. Although he had asked Fan Shuang and the rest to spread the news that he was going to the Ascension sect, he did not follow a fixed path. Even if the Murong family knew that he was going to the Ascension sect, It was impossible for them to know which path he was going to take beforehand. However, the people led by Elder Ingyen had not only set up an ambush in advance, but they had also used the God Crasher. If it were not for his quick reaction, he might have been severely injured by the God Crasher. Zhuowen recalled the old lady next to Elder Ingyen. He narrowed his eyes and mumbled to himself, "Could it be that the old lady is a spirit master of speech?" Zhuowen knew that there was a special profession called Spirit Master of Speech in the 100 Territories. Spirit Masters of Speech were able to predict certain things. For example, they could sense evil spirits in the dark and determine the location of evil spirits in advance, as well as the method to subdue evil spirits. At the same time, they could also predict the approximate location of the person they were looking for. Obviously, the Murong family must have hired a very powerful spirit master of speech. That was why they could accurately predict his route and set up an ambush in advance. I think the Murong family won't dare to come after me anymore. By the time they return to the Murong family and gather people to surround me, I'll have already returned to the Ascension sect. Zhuowen thought about it for a while and felt relieved. He had defeated Elder Ingyen. The Murong family would definitely not come after him to their death. Elder Ingyen must be one of the most powerful people in the Murong family. Obviously, they did not expect Elder Ingyen to fail. Now that an accident had occurred, the Murong family would definitely need time to react. This time would be enough for Zhuowen to arrive at the Ascension sect. As long as he entered the Ascension sect, the Murong family would not dare to do anything to him. Zhuowen took out the token that Elder Yuchi had given him. After thinking about it for a while, he put it away again. He did not plan to use Elder Yuchi's token. He had exposed too many things. The Murong family knew about his secret. If he joined the Ascension sect openly, the Murong family would reveal all of his secrets. There was no guarantee that the Ascension sect's higher-ups would not be tempted by his secrets. Chapter 3745. The Ascension sect was built on the Sky Dragon mountain range that stretched for tens of thousands of miles. There were many buildings built on the mountain range. From afar, the entire mountain range was filled with pavilions and towers. It was like a mysterious and unfathomable mountain of immortals. Today, the mountain gate of the Ascension sect was bustling with noise and excitement. Many young cultivators had gathered. They were all young cultivators from all over the Ji prefecture. They had come to participate in the test and enter the Ascension sect. A man and a woman wearing the Ascension sect's insignia stood in front of the mountain gate of the Ascension sect. A palm-sized transparent pearl was suspended in front of the man and woman. There was a whirlpool inside the pearl that was slowly rotating. They are senior brother Zhou Ji and senior sister Ni Kai. They are the top 10 experts among the Ascension sect's outer sect disciples. I didn't expect that the entrance test would be conducted by the two of them. Many young cultivators in front of the mountain gate exclaimed softly when they saw the man and woman. They had obviously recognized the two of them. Everyone, thank you for choosing our Ascension sect. Today's entrance test is very simple. You only need to touch the test pearl in front of me. As long as you can make the test pearl react, it means that your Tao root has passed and you can become an outer sect disciple of the Ascension sect. If you can make the test pearl emit a strong phenomenon, you can directly become an inner sect disciple. Everything depends on the aptitude of your Tao root. Now let the test begin. Everyone, line up one by one. Zhou Ji placed the test pearl in front of them. Then, the young cultivators in front of the mountain gate all quieted down and stepped forward to take the test. Fail! Fail! After more than 10 people stepped forward and touched the test pearl, they couldn't make the test pearl react at all. They were directly disqualified. These young cultivators who failed all lowered their heads. Their Tao root aptitudes were truly too weak. They couldn't even make the test pearl react. Brothers who failed, don't worry. After this round of test, there will be a second round. As long as any of you can pass the second round, you can also enter the Ascension sect and become an outer sect disciple. Zhou Ji spoke again, and it reignited the hope of those people who failed. Zhuowen mixed in with the group and looked at the test pearl with a trace of a bitter smile on the corner of his mouth. He knew that he didn't have a Dao root at all. He didn't even need to consider the first round of test. Pass! A sweet-looking young woman placed her palm on the testing bead. Immediately, the whirlpool within the testing bead spun much faster. Zhou Ji smiled and looked at the young woman in a rather friendly manner. The young woman was stunned for a moment before she clenched her fists in excitement. Junior sister, you are standing behind us. Congratulations, you are now an outer disciple of the Heaven's Emergence sect. Kai, who was originally cold beside Zhou Ji, revealed a smile for the first time as she greeted the young woman. The young woman hurried to Kai's side, her face flushed red. Hello brother, my name is Tang Hongmiao. I'm very happy to stand behind you. What's your name? Zhuowen turned around and saw a slightly plump young man smiling at Zhuowen in a friendly manner. My name is Zhuowen Yanxue, Zhuowen said calmly. Since he planned to enter the Ascension sect with a different identity, he naturally didn't plan to use his real name. Moreover, he also changed his appearance slightly. Oh, so it's brother Yanxue. I've heard so much about you. We will soon be fellow disciples of the same sect. Please give me your guidance in the future. Also, my favorite thing is to make friends. In the future, we will be friends everywhere. That's my dream. Tang Hongmiao said with a smile. After that, Tang Hongmiao shook hands with Zhuowen. Then, he walked past Zhuowen and said to the young cultivator in front of Zhuowen, Hello brother, my name is Tang Hongmiao. I'm very happy to stand behind you. What's your name? Zhuowen looked at the confused face of the young man in front of him and was speechless. What was this fatty doing? Was this considered making friends? After greeting all the young cultivators in the group, Tang Hongmiao returned to Zhuowen's side and gave Zhuowen an extremely bright smile. Brother Zhuo, am I very cool? Did my social skills amaze you? Tang Hongmiao revealed his white teeth and said in an intoxicated manner. Zhuowen was speechless. Brother Hongmiao is indeed a member of the Tang family. You have such a wide range of connections. These days, it's all thanks to Brother Hongmiao for helping us and even providing us with cultivation resources. A rather steady young man walked over slowly. Beside him was a man and a woman. The man's gaze was somewhat gloomy. The woman's appearance was not bad. There was a trace of charm between her eyebrows. When Tang Hongmiao saw the woman, his eyes revealed an infatuated expression. Obviously, he was interested in this woman. Brother Lu, you are too polite. I should be the one thanking you. Along the way, you have shared a lot of cultivation experiences with me. Moreover, with your Dao root, entering the Ascension sect will be a piece of cake. Unlike me, my Dao root is not that good, Tang Hongmiao said with a slightly discouraged tone. The steady young man patted Tang Hongmiao's shoulder and said with a smile, Hongmiao, don't be discouraged. Your Dao root is actually quite good. I think you will definitely have no problem becoming an outer sect disciple. Moreover, I heard that if you can become an inner sect disciple in this test, then you will have a recommendation quota. If I can directly become an inner sect disciple, I will absolutely recommend you to enter the Ascension sect. After all, it was you who helped the three of us along the way. Tang Hongmiao's face flushed red, and he said excitedly, Brother Lu, you are indeed loyal. With Brother Lu's Dao root, you will definitely become an inner sect disciple. The corners of the steady young man's mouth curled up slightly. Even though he said modest words, the arrogance on his face became even denser. Zhuowen silently listened to the conversation of Tang Hongmiao and the others, but he took another glance at the steady young man. He could sense that this young man's Dao root was indeed not bad. Entering the Ascension sect should be completely no problem. Soon, it was Zhuowen's turn to be tested. Zhuowen went forward and placed his hand on the testing pearl. After that, the pearl did not have any reaction at all. Sure enough, no Tao root. Zhuowen was speechless in his heart. He left the testing pearl and obediently went to the side where he failed. He knew that he could only enter the Ascension sect through the second round. He could not hope for the first round. Haha. No reaction at all. This fellow either has no Tao root, or his Tao root is trash. He is simply a piece of trash. This kind of fellow actually has the face to participate in the Ascension sect's test. I don't know where his courage comes from. The steady young man and the others were not far behind Zhuowen. The young woman following behind the young man saw Zhuowen's performance and sneered with ridicule. "Furong, you are too rude," the steady young man said in a low voice. Furong curled her lips and did not speak. Instead, it was this steady young man who glanced indifferently at Zhuowen and did not have the intention of asking Furong to apologize. Zhuowen glanced indifferently at these three people and did not say anything, but instead stood to the side. "Little sister Furong, your words were indeed rude earlier. There is still the second round. I believe that Brother Zhuo will surely be able to pass the second round." Tang Hongmiao spoke for Zhuowen instead. Chapter 3746. Hongmiao, Furong has always been like this. She speaks without thinking. Don't take it to heart. The steady young man said indifferently. Tang Hongmiao smiled and rubbed his head. How could that be? What kind of friendship do we have? Why would I take such a trivial matter to heart? Then hurry up and take the test, the steady youth said indifferently. Tang Hongmiao nodded. Full of hope, he placed his right hand on the test bead. Then, there was a slight reaction from the test bead, but it soon stopped. Zhou Ji looked at the test bead and shook his head. Failed. Tang Hongmiao's face turned pale, and his eyes were filled with disappointment. He didn't expect that he would fail. Tang Hongmiao, you are indeed trash as well. Furong sneered. Tang Hongmiao's expression flickered, and his face flushed red. He looked at the steady-looking young man, and was about to say something when the young man interrupted him. Hongmiao, you're done with the test. You can leave now. I still have to take the test, don't block my way. As he spoke, the steady young man pushed Tang Hongmiao to the side. Then, he excitedly placed his hand on the test bead. Immediately, the testing bead emitted a blazing light, and the vortex inside the bead started to spin rapidly. This is a mid-grade ancestral Tao root. This person is not bad. Zhou Ji and An Kai shuddered as they looked at the steady young man in excitement. Junior brother, what's your name? Zhou Ji asked excitedly. Reporting to senior brother, my name is Lu Yongwang. The steady youth smiled. Good. You possess a high-grade ancestral Tao root, so you're qualified to directly become an inner court disciple. I truly never expected that I would be able to encounter a genius with a high-grade ancestral Tao root. Zhou Ji spoke with an excited expression. An Kai even pulled Lu Yong to her side and asked about his well-being with great enthusiasm. After that, the man and woman who had followed Lu Yong also took the test. They basically all possessed low-grade Tao roots, and all of them passed. As expected of Brother Lu, it's actually a high-grade ancestral Tao root, and I'll be able to become an inner court disciple right away. As a friend, I can also benefit from it. He will definitely recommend me to enter the Ascension sect, Tang Hongmiao said excitedly. Zhuowen was a little speechless as he glanced at Tang Hongmiao beside him. This guy is too slow. From the attitude of Furong and Lu Yongwang just now, it could be seen that the three of them did not treat Tang Hongmiao as a friend at all. Zhuowen knew that Lu Yong would never waste a spot on Tang Hongmiao. Brother Tang, I think you should prepare for the second round. That Lu Yong shouldn't have used the quota on you, Zhuowen said. Tang Hongmiao was stunned. He shook his head and said to Zhuowen with a smile, Brother Zhuo, I'm very good at judging people. Brother Lu is a responsible and loyal person. He won't break his promise to me." As he spoke, Tang Hongmiao waved his hand at Lu Yong and the other two and said loudly, "Big Brother Lu, little sister Furong Wei Zi, congratulations on successfully entering the Ascension sect. Also, Brother Lu, you also want to become an inner court disciple. Do you still remember that you promised me to recommend me to enter the Ascension sect?" Lu Yongwang glanced at Tang Hongmiao indifferently and said, "Tang Hongmiao, turns out that you approached me because of this objective. I've really misjudged you. In the past, I saw clearly what kind of person you were. First, I saw clearly that it was impossible for me to waste a spot on a snobbish person like you." As he spoke, Lu Yongwang no longer paid attention to Tang Hongmiao, and he started chatting happily with Ni Kai instead. Furong and Wei Zi glanced at Tang Hongmiao with contempt, and they both pretended not to see Tang Hongmiao. Tang Hongmiao's pupils constricted, and his face went ghastly pale. He'd already understood. Lu Yongwang had only been using him all along the way, and to think that he'd always distributed his cultivation resources to the three of them. So it turned out that they didn't treat him as a friend at all. Zhuowen glanced at the dejected Tang Hongmiao, shook his head, and said, "Brother Tang, making friends isn't a one-sided effort, and it should be mutual effort. A true friend wouldn't ask blindly, and they'll give in every possible way to you and give their hearts out. Also, having more friends isn't better, but whether it's sincere or not." Zhuowen knew that Tang Hongmiao had already entered the wrong path when making friends, and that was why he suffered a great loss this time. Tang Hongmiao stared blankly at Zhuowen, and he actually started crying. Brother Zhuo, thank you for comforting me. Also, you're right, I've entered the wrong path when making friends, it's my mistake. In the future, you'll be my true friend." As Tang Hongmiao cried, he wanted to go over and hug Zhuowen, but Zhuowen dodged. Zhuowen held his forehead speechlessly. He felt that Tang Hongmiao definitely had a screw loose in his head. Brother Zhuo, this talisman is like an iron bastion, and it can greatly increase your defensive power. It'll be of great help to you in passing the second round. Also, thank you very much." Tang Hongmiao seriously handed a talisman to Zhuowen and said with a smile, "What about you?" Zhuowen originally wanted to refuse, but Tang Hongmiao's expression was too serious, and he couldn't refuse. "I have too, so don't worry." Tang Hongmiao nodded. "Thank you." Zhuowen patted Tang Hongmiao's shoulder, and an obscure sword intent entered Tang Hongmiao's body. This was the power of the Divine Soul Sword intent, and it could help Tang Hongmiao pass the second round. The first round of the test was completed, and only a dozen people passed. Compared to a team of thousands, this ratio was indeed very small. Ni Kai had already brought the qualified people into the mountain gate, leaving only Zhou Ji in front of the mountain gate, looking at the people who didn't pass. "Next, I'll arrange the second round for you. As long as you can pass the second round, you can also enter the Ascension sect. However, the second round is very dangerous, and it's life-threatening. If anyone wants to withdraw, now is your last chance." Zhou Ji's gaze was solemn. When he said this, hundreds of people in the team quietly withdrew. Zhou Ji re-examined the remaining people and continued, "Very good, those of you who stayed, your courage is commendable." Suddenly, Zhou Ji pointed to a large mountain to the side and said, "At the foot of this mountain, there's a golem cave. It's filled with golems. If you can walk out of the golem cave, then you'll pass the second round. It's very simple. However, the golems in the golem cave are all at the early stage of the embryonic divine transformation realm, and there are many of them. Even those at the middle and late stage of the embryonic divine transformation realm will find it difficult to pass through the golem cave unscathed. If you're not careful, you might die in there. You have to think carefully." At this time, another group of people withdrew. The golem cave was too risky, and they weren't willing to take the risk. Soon, there were only 700 to 800 people left, and Tang Hongmiao was standing beside Zhuowen. Let's begin. You all enter the golem cave and I'll go to the other side. Those who can reach there are qualified. After Zhou Ji finished speaking, he took out a green bamboo raft and flew into the air, heading to the other side of the mountain to wait. After Zhou Ji left, the remaining people all moved, rushing toward the golem cave. Brother Zhou, if you believe me, then follow behind me. I can bring you out of the golem cave safely. Zhuowen suddenly said. Tang Hongmiao was stunned, then looked at Zhuowen seriously and nodded. Brother Zhua, I believe you. Chapter 37:47. The Stone Man Cave was extremely dark, and the light inside was extremely dim. One could only see a few meters ahead of them. When Zhuowen led Tang Hongmiao into the Stone Man Cave, they immediately heard the sound of rocks colliding with each other, as well as shrill screams. Tang Hongmiao's expression changed slightly. His cultivation was a bit weak. At most, he was around the 4th blight. Among the participating teams, he could only be considered one of the weakest. As soon as he entered the Stone Man Cave, he sensed that many people had already died. Moreover, they were all participants stronger than him. How could he not be alarmed and terrified? Brother Tang, remember to follow me closely. I might be faster. After saying this, Zhuowen rushed forward, not at all afraid of the sudden appearance of a terrifying stone man. Tang Hongmiao's scalp went numb, but he didn't cower. Instead, he followed closely behind Zhuowen. In any case, he still had the impenetrable defense talisman on him. It was enough to protect his life. Soon, the two of them encountered the first stone man. This stone man's body was made of stone, and its eyes emitted a scarlet light. Boom! When the stone man discovered Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao, it immediately threw out a punch. The wind from the punch whistled through the air, and the air was filled with endless explosions. This stone man is so strong. It's actually at the divine fetus transformation realm. We can't fight it at all. Brother Zhua, quickly dodge! Tang Hongmiao shouted. But to Tang Hongmiao's surprise, Zhuowen didn't dodge. Instead, he charged straight at the stone man. It's over. Tang Hongmiao's face turned deathly pale. Boom! Zhuowen casually threw out a punch which met the stone man's fist. Then, the stone man stopped and shattered into countless pieces. What? He destroyed a stone man with one punch? Tang Hongmiao was dumbfounded. His face was filled with disbelief. But when he saw Zhuowen continue to charge forward without saying anything, he suppressed the shock in his heart and quickly followed behind Zhuowen. Tang Hongmiao wasn't a fool. He already knew that this man named Zhuanyanxue was definitely not an ordinary person. At the very least, this person's strength was definitely the strongest among this batch of people. Following that, Tang Hongmiao's entire body went numb. Everywhere Zhuowen passed by, what was left behind were all remains of stone men. About a quarter of an hour later, they saw the exit. At the exit of the golem cave, Zhou Ji crossed his arms and leaned against a rock. I'm afraid none of these unqualified fellows will be able to pass the golem cave. After all, the golem cave is indeed too difficult for them. Zhou Ji mumbled. But soon, Zhou Ji narrowed his eyes. He discovered that two figures had appeared at the exit. It has only been 15 minutes, and someone has already cleared the trial? And there are two of them. Zhou Ji looked at Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao in disbelief. How did you two get out? Or is it that you guys didn't enter the Stoneman Cave at all, but circled around from outside the Stoneman Cave? Zhou Ji said solemnly. We did come out of the golem cave. Didn't you see it with your own eyes? Why are you denying it now? Zhuowen countered with a question. Zhou Ji frowned. He looked deeply at Zhuowen and said, This golem cave is filled with stone men at the divine fetus transformation realm. Even if it was me, it would be impossible for me to come out in 15 minutes. But you guys actually came out so quickly. That's impossible, Zhuowen said calmly. You can't do it, but that doesn't mean I can't. Zhou Ji's eyes narrowed dangerously. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and grinned. You mean to say that I, one of the top 10 outer sect disciples, can't even compare to a piece of trash like you who didn't even pass the aptitude test? Tang Hongmiao sensed that the atmosphere was not right and hurriedly said, Senior Brother Zhou, we did come out of the Golem Cave. Also, Brother Zhou didn't mean to offend you. He's just like that. He's a bit blunt. Don't take it to heart. Shut up, you piece of trash. You two must have circled around the mountain to come here. Don't even think about entering the Ascension sect today. Scram, Zhou Ji said coldly. Tang Hongmiao's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect things to develop to this point. They had finally passed through the Golem Cave, and now they were going to be driven out of the Ascension sect. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for him to return to the Tang family? You don't believe that we can pass through the Golem Cave because you think we're not strong enough. If I prove my strength, then you have to believe it even if you don't believe it, Zhuowen said calmly. Prove your strength? How do you want to prove it? Zhou Ji said mockingly. I'll defeat you in one move. That'll prove my strength, Zhuowen said calmly. Tang Hongmiao's heart was in his throat. How could this Brother Zhou speak like that? He had completely offended Zhou Ji. Defeat me in one move? Zhou Ji was stunned. Then, he looked up to the sky and laughed. He continued, What a joke. A piece of trash like you actually dares to speak such arrogant words. My cultivation is already at the peak of the divine fetus transformation realm, and I'm one of the top outer sect disciples. You actually talk big and want to defeat me in one move. What a joke. But that's fine too. I haven't met such an arrogant newcomer in a long time. Today, I'll let you experience my strength and let you know how big the gap between us is. As he spoke, Zhou Ji took a step forward. His aura exploded, and he appeared in front of Zhuowen in the blink of an eye. He threw a punch at Zhuowen's face. Ai, Brother Zhou, why are you so impulsive? You actually contradicted Senior Brother Zhou Ji. Senior Brother Zhou Ji is much stronger than the Golem Cave. Tang Hongmiao sighed inwardly. Crack. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Tang Hongmiao was shocked to find that Zhou Ji's fist was easily caught in Zhuowen's hand. Then, with a twist, Zhou Ji's arm was directly twisted. Zhou Ji held his right hand and rolled on the ground, screaming in pain. The gap between you and me is indeed very obvious. You're called Zhou Ji, right? I'm warning you now. If you dare to provoke me again, I'll really kill you. Zhuowen looked coldly at Zhou Ji, and the killing intent in his eyes was not concealed at all. Zhou Ji was trembling in fear. Who the hell is this guy? How can he be so strong? He's on a completely different level from me. I won't dare to do it again. Zhou Ji endured the pain and threw 2 jade tokens to Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao. He said, These are your identity tokens. From today onward, the two of you are outer sect disciples of the Ascension sect. Zhuowen took the jade tokens and lifted Zhou Ji up. He said indifferently, Lead the way for us. Tell us where we live in the sect, as well as some specific information about the sect. If you can satisfy me, I'll only cut off your arm. Of course, you'd better not say anything about me. Otherwise, you'll die very quickly. Zhou Ji's entire body trembled, and he hurriedly nodded. After that, he obediently led the way for Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao. As for the Golem Cave, no one cared about it anymore. Because after Zhuowen left the Golem Cave, he knew that the remaining people who had entered the Golem Cave had basically all died. So, there was no need for Zhou Ji to continue waiting. This world was just so cruel. If your strength was insufficient, then even if you were undergoing the entrance test, you would still die. If you wanted to survive in this world and live well, then you had to become even stronger. Chapter 3748. Give me your communication jade talisman. After all, I just entered the sect. If I need to know more, I'll look for you directly. Zhuowen said indifferently. Zhou Ji smiled bitterly and obediently handed his communication jade talisman to Zhuowen. This is a healing elixir. Take it yourself. It should be quite beneficial for your injuries. Zhuowen casually tossed a divine elixir to Zhou Ji. This was the 7 Lives Qi Recovery Elixir. It was a heaven-breaking level 1 healing elixir that Zhuowen created when he was in the lower realm. He had refined quite a number of them back then, so casually taking one out was nothing to him. Heaven-breaking level 1 healing elixir? Zhou Ji's pupils constricted. He could tell that Zhuowen gave him a heaven-breaking level 1 elixir. This level of elixir was only available to inner sect disciples in the Ascension sect. Although he was one of the top 10 outer sect disciples, he still needed to pay a huge price to exchange for this level of elixir. However, Zhuowen casually gave it to him. It could be seen how wealthy this person was. In addition to Zhuowen's powerful strength, Zhou Ji's gaze became much more respectful. You may leave. If there's anything, I'll use the communication jade talisman to contact you. Zhuowen said indifferently. Zhou Ji left respectfully. After Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao settled down, Zhuowen went straight to the Divine Abilities Pavilion. The Divine Abilities Pavilion was one of the most important places in the Ascension sect. It contained all the divine abilities that had been collected since the Ascension sect was founded. With Zhuowen's current strength, he was at the peak even in the Ascension sect. However, Zhuowen knew that his strength mainly came from the half-moon divine fire spear and the purple toad. On the other hand, his own strength was not that strong. In addition, he had never learned any divine abilities systematically. Therefore, he joined the Ascension sect to learn more things systematically. Moreover, there were many books and knowledge about alchemy and array Dao in the Ascension sect. He could use this period of time in the Ascension sect to improve his alchemy and array Dao again. Zhou Ji had previously introduced to him that the Mystical Abilities Pavilion had a total of 5 levels. Outer sect disciples only had the right to enter the first level. Inner disciples could enter the second floor, while core disciples could enter the third floor. As for the fourth floor, only the elders of the Ascension School could enter it. As for the fifth floor, it was the most secretive floor. It was said that only the Ascension School's master could enter it. There were quite a number of disciples coming in and out of the Magical Abilities Pavilion. Zhuowen was wearing the uniform of the Ascension School. He blended into the crowd and looked ordinary. No one noticed him. At the front desk of the Mystique Pavilion, a 30-year-old woman with an extremely hot figure sat silently. From the conversations of the people around her, he could tell that this woman was the manager of the Mystique Pavilion. Her name was Lianyu. It was said that her temper was as fiery as her figure. An outer disciple who just entered the sect? Lianyu took Zhuowen's identity jade token and casually scanned it a few times. Then, she threw the jade token back to Zhuowen. You can only choose a divine ability from the first level, and you can only bring out one divine ability. The time limit is 1 month. If you don't return it within a month, you're dead meat. Lianyu said indifferently. Zhuowen kept the identity jade token and said indifferently, Elder Lianyu, I would like to ask if there's any way for an outer disciple to enter the higher levels of the Magical Abilities Pavilion. Lianyu squinted her eyes slowly, revealing a hint of danger. You're just a piece of trash who just entered the sect. You want to enter the higher levels? Are you dreaming? Lianyu sneered. Zhuowen's eyes became sharp like an unsheathed sword. He said in a deep voice, Elder Lianyu, I'm asking you if there's a way. You only need to answer yes or no. There's no need to talk so much nonsense. Elder Lianyu's delicate body trembled. She actually felt a chill from the bottom of her heart. It had been a long time since she felt this way. There is. Elder Lianyu replied with a gloomy face. What's the way? Zhuowen's eyes lit up. In the north of the Ascension sect, there's a sinkhole. There's a total of 81 sinkholes in it. Each sinkhole is filled with danger. Since you're an outer disciple, if you can pass through the first 10 sinkholes, you'll have the right to enter the next level. In other words, if you want to enter the second level, you must pass through the first 10 sinkholes. You have to pass through the first 10 sinkholes and obtain a token to enter the second level of the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Elder Lianyu sneered. The sinkhole was the most terrifying training ground in the Ascension sect. Every year, countless disciples of the Ascension sect would enter the training ground. However, only a small number of them could survive. Moreover, to challenge the sinkhole, one must at least have the strength of an inner disciple. If an outer disciple were to challenge the sinkhole, it would be tantamount to suicide. In Elder Lianyu's opinion, this lad would not dare to challenge the sinkhole. He was just pretending in front of her. Thank you, Elder Lianyu. After I leave the Magical Abilities Pavilion, I'll naturally challenge the sinkhole. Zhuowen cupped his hands at Elder Lianyu and strode into the first level of the Magical Abilities Pavilion. In the 100 outer regions, the magical abilities were divided into level 1 to level 10. In the first level of the Magical Abilities Pavilion, most of the magical abilities were level 1. He heard that the magical abilities on the 5th level of the Magical Abilities Pavilion were extremely powerful level 5 magical abilities. Zhuowen had roughly estimated that the power of the 3 divine abilities that he had created was probably only between the first and second level. Zhuowen's purpose in the Magical Abilities Pavilion was naturally to learn the strongest magical abilities of the Ascension sect. Those level 1 and level 2 magical abilities were of little value to him. The reason why he wanted to browse the first level of the Magical Abilities Pavilion was mainly to increase his knowledge. Elder Lianyu glanced at Zhuowen and sneered in her heart. She felt that Zhuowen was simply boasting. The first floor of the Mystical Abilities Pavilion was abnormally spacious. It was densely packed with rows of bookshelves, and all of them were rank 1 mystical abilities. Thunderbolt Sword Art, Green Howl Halberd Art, Floating Light Shadow. These books were like ancient books with the names of the magical abilities written on the cover. Of course, they were only the most basic of the magical abilities. Zhuowen casually opened the Thunderbolt Sword Art and briefly browsed through it. He was instantly stunned. The moment he opened the Thunderbolt Sword Art, the Tai word stone hidden in the depths of his divine soul actually reacted. Then, Zhuowen realized that the Tai word stone was emitting a purple light and appeared in his divine soul. It actually projected a blurry figure in his divine soul. The figure's facial features were unclear and it was holding an equally blurry divine sword. Under Zhuowen's incredulous gaze, the blurry figure began to dance with the divine sword. The sound of the sword was like rolling thunder. Streaks of lightning energy exploded from the shadows of the sword. The power was unparalleled. This is the Thunderbolt Sword Art? Zhuowen's eyes revealed a look of enlightenment. As the blurry figure continued to dance with the divine sword, it was as if he was personally in the scene. All the essentials of the Thunderbolt Sword Art were completely comprehended at this moment. This Tai word stone actually has such a function? Zhuowen was overjoyed. This was his first time coming into contact with the magical abilities of the 100 domains outside the realm. However, it had given him great benefits. The Tai word stone could actually allow him to instantly comprehend the essentials of the magical abilities. This function was simply too heaven-defying. What's going on? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. Another blurry figure appeared in his divine soul. Chapter 3749. When the battle between the two figures reached its climax, Zhuowen discovered that the two figures overlap. In the end, they completely fused together. What's going on? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He discovered that after the two figures overlapped, the aura of the new figure became even more vast. Furthermore, this figure was surrounded by the shadow of a sword and a saber. Immediately after, a message appeared in Zhuowen's mind. Grand Mist Soldier Formula: fuse all the divine abilities in the world, wield all the divine weapons in the universe. Grand Mist Soldier Formula? Zhuowen was stunned. After pondering for a moment, his eyes revealed a blazing light. He discovered that ever since the figures manifested by the two divine abilities had completely merged, he had completely mastered the two divine abilities. To be more precise, the two divine abilities had already merged into one and become a new divine ability. Furthermore, the grade of this divine ability was higher than the Grand Mist Floating Blade and the Lightning Sword art. In other words, the divine ability derived from the fusion of the two was actually an evolution process. If his memories could fuse with more divine abilities, wouldn't he be able to continuously raise the grade of the Primordial Soldier Mantra's divine ability? Thinking of this, Zhuowen decided to experiment. He quietly put down the Lightning Sword art and picked up the Green Howl Halberd art. The moment he released the Green Howl Halberd art, a new blurry figure appeared in his soul. This figure was holding a large halberd and was fighting with the previous figure. The same thing happened again. In the midst of the battle, the two figures merged together again. The new figure that was formed was surrounded by the shadow of a saber, a sword, and a halberd. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with surprise. There were thousands of divine abilities on the first floor of the Divine Ability Pavilion. If he could fuse all these divine abilities, he might be able to fuse them into a divine ability of an extremely high grade. However, when Zhuowen picked up the floating light shadow, a new blurry figure appeared in his soul. However, this figure did not fight with the previous figure. Instead, it used a movement technique and flew around his soul like a ghost. He was demonstrating the divine ability, Floating Light Shadow. After this new figure finished demonstrating its sacred art, it actually stood quietly beside the first figure. Then, Zhuowen discovered that his self-created sacred art, Primordial Purple Snow, appeared and merged with the figure formed by Floating Light Shadow. Grand Mist Movement Technique, treading on boundless space and transcending time. Zhuowen was stunned. He took a look at Floating Light Shadow and realized that this divine art was the same as Primordial Purple Snow. They were both movement divine arts. After Floating Light Shadow merged with Primordial Purple Snow, a new blurry figure was formed. He stood quietly beside the figure formed by Primordial Soldier Mantra, and the two of them were at peace. The Primordial Stone really gave me a huge surprise. The Primordial Soldier Mantra and the Primordial Movement Art are two types of divine abilities that can be continuously upgraded. Just like humans, they can be cultivated and upgraded. I've never seen or heard of such a divine ability before. This is my biggest secret, and I definitely can't let anyone know about it. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. In the past, he had always thought that the Primordial Stone's function was only to record the Primordial technique. But now, he realized that the Primordial Stone was far more mysterious than he had imagined. At least, he had never thought that the Primordial Stone could fuse astral weapon fragments and various kinds of divine abilities. This was a very terrifying innate talent because he could continuously fuse and forge the most powerful abilities and the most powerful astral weapon. And this was the most important ability that allowed Zhuowen to rise rapidly in the 100 domains outside the realm and reach the top. Next, Zhuowen began to frantically flip through the divine ability books on the first level. Of course, he didn't read it carefully, but rather skimmed through it very roughly. The Primordial Stone would record all the contents of the ancient book, and manifest an indistinct figure in his divine sense before fusing with it. By the time Zhuowen finished reading the last divine ability book on the first level, half a day had already passed. And Zhuowen discovered that the Primordial Soldier Mantra and Primordial Movement Technique had already been upgraded to the peak of the second level. Zhuowen knew that if he wanted to upgrade these two divine abilities, he wouldn't be able to do so even if he continued to fuse the first-level divine abilities. After all, the level of the first-level divine abilities was too low. If he really wanted to rely on quantity to upgrade them, Zhuowen estimated that he would need at least hundreds of thousands of different first-level divine abilities to be able to do so. Zhuowen knew that if he wanted to continue upgrading the primordial soldier mantra and primordial movement technique, he would have to fuse the second level or even the third level divine abilities. Looks like it's time to go to the sky pit. Let's get the token to enter the second level first. Zhuowen left the divine ability pavilion. He looked at the sky and realized that it was about to turn dark. He decided to go to the sky pit tomorrow. The night of the 100 outer territories was filled with evil spirits. Although there were statues made of fluorite everywhere in the Ascension sect, the evil spirits around the mountain range didn't dare to enter the Ascension sect and disturb the disciples. However, the Ascension sect was simply too big. Moreover, the Sky Dragon mountain range where it was located was even more dangerous. The evil spirits were abnormally powerful. The disciples' residences were surrounded by a large array and were very safe. However, a training ground like the Sky Pit didn't have so many protective measures. Occasionally, some powerful evil spirits would break through the barrier and enter the training ground. This was also a common occurrence. Therefore, the Ascension sect had a rule that after nightfall, disciples had to return to their residences. Otherwise, they would be punished according to the sect's rules. On the way back to his residence, Zhuowen met Zhouji. Zhouji had also just come out of the Divine Ability Pavilion. When he saw Zhuowen, he immediately greeted him respectfully. After receiving the 7 Lives Chi recovery pill from Zhuowen, Zhouji's injuries recovered extremely quickly. In just a few hours, his injuries were completely healed. After recovering from his injuries, he came to the Divine Ability Pavilion to choose a new divine ability to cultivate. He originally thought that Zhuowen had already left the Divine Ability Pavilion. However, he didn't expect that Zhuowen actually stayed in the Divine Ability Pavilion for more than half a day and only left when night fell. Zhouji, your residence isn't far from mine. Let's go back together, Zhuowen said indifferently and walked forward. Zhouji was submissive and followed closely behind Zhuowen. His posture was like a loyal follower. Many disciples who came out of the Divine Ability Pavilion were surprised when they saw this scene. Zhouji was one of the top 10 experts in the Outer Sect. He was very famous among the Outer Sect disciples. Many disciples knew Zhouji. However, when they saw Zhouji obediently following behind Zhuowen, many disciples secretly guessed that Zhuowen's identity wasn't ordinary. When Zhuowen returned to his residence, he found that there were people moving around in his courtyard. Chapter 3750. It's you, Trash? Why are you in the Ascension sect? When Wei Zi saw Zhuowen, he immediately called him a piece of trash. Zhuowen's eyes darkened as he coldly said, "This is my residence. I'll give you 3 seconds to scram." Wei Zi was enraged and sneered, "I don't know how trash like you entered the Ascension sect. You must have been brought in by that trash Tang Hongmiao. The two of you are quite bold. You clearly didn't pass the test and still dared to sneak into the sect. But that's fine too. I'll personally break your limbs and hand you over to Senior Apprentice Sister Ni Kai. This way, Senior Apprentice Sister Ni Kai won't have to do anything." Wei Zi laughed sinisterly as he stepped towards Zhuowen. His right hand formed a claw and smashed towards Zhuowen's legs. It was clear that he was indeed planning to break Zhuowen's limbs, starting from his legs. Zhuowen stood in place and coldly looked at Wei Zi, who was getting closer and closer. When Wei Zi was in front of him, Zhuowen punched out and landed on his claw. Gotcha! Wei Zi's right hand directly twisted and exploded into a bloody mist. Wei Zi loudly screamed as he fell to the ground. Then, Zhuowen stepped out with his right foot and unceremoniously stepped on his forelimbs 4 times. 4 crisp sounds of bones breaking rang out as Wei Zi's forelimbs were completely crushed. Wei Zi directly fainted from the pain. Wei Zi was only at the 5th heaven's blight, while Zhuowen was at the peak of the fetal god transformation stage. Every step he took was imbued with god-shattering stage power. If Wei Zi wanted to repair his limbs, unless he found a treasure, he would be a complete cripple in the future. Zhuowen lifted Wei Zi up with one hand and fiercely slapped him twice. Wei Zi cried out in shock and immediately woke up. When he saw Zhuowen in front of him, he immediately screamed in fear. Zhuowen didn't pay attention to the screaming Wei Zi. Instead, he carried him and walked towards the residence next door. Tang Hongmiao lived next door to him. Now that Wei Zi had taken over his residence, and from Wei Zi's words, he vaguely knew that Tang Hongmiao's situation wasn't good. Bang! Zhuowen kicked open Tang Hongmiao's door and barged in. Just as he expected, he did not see Tang Hongmiao in the room. Where is Tang Hongmiao? Zhuowen stared coldly at Wei Zidao. Wei Zi had long been scared silly. Now that he saw Zhuowen asking, how could he dare to hide anything? It turned out that under Ni Kai's lead, he and Furong first followed Lu Yong into the inner court disciples' residence. They strolled around the inner court disciples' area for a while before returning to the outer court disciples' area. It was precisely because of this that Wei Zi and Furong came back later than Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao to choose a place to stay. In order to curry favor with Lu Yongwang, Ni Kai planned to give the best residence in the outer disciple area to Wei Zi and Furong. It happened to be the room that Zhou Ji had arranged for Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao. After they entered the room, they immediately discovered Tang Hongmiao. Thus, without saying anything, they captured Tang Hongmiao and determined that he had snuck into the Ascension School. Now, Tang Hongmiao had already been brought to the Law Enforcement Hall by Ni Kai and Furong. According to the Ascension School's rules, it was a capital offense for an outsider to sneak into the Ascension School. Tang Hongmiao has the outer court disciple identity token on him. Why are you so sure that he snuck in? Zhuowen asked furiously. Wei Zi's eyes flickered as he hemmed and hawed. Speak. If there's half a lie, I'll kill you right now. Zhuowen tightened his grip. Wei Zi cried out in pain and hurriedly told the truth. It turned out that after Tang Hongmiao met them, he immediately flashed the identity token on him. However, it was snatched away by Ni Kai and she slandered Tang Hongmiao for forging the identity token. Ni Kai, Furong, the two of you are courting death. Zhuowen's eyes were brimming with killing intent as he continued. Tell me the direction to the Law Enforcement Hall. Otherwise, die. Wei Zi was much more tactful now. He cooperated with Zhuowen and took the initiative to point the way for Zhuowen. As the night fell, the entire Ascension School lit up with bright light. Zhuowen walked along the mountain path and soon came to the entrance of the Law Enforcement Hall. At this moment, a few people walked out of the Law Enforcement Hall. The person in the lead was an old man in an elder's costume. His eyes were cold, he had a goatee, and his body emitted a gloomy and cold aura. This person was Li Xiong, the law enforcement elder of Ascension School. Behind him were 2 attendants who wore iron chains and black iron masks. Their auras were extremely strong. Beside Li Xiong and the other 2 people, there were 2 women. These 2 women were Ni Kai and Furong. The Law Enforcement Hall was originally closed 15 minutes ago. Because of you, it delayed a lot of time. As a result, it's already dark now. Although it's within the sect's territory, you still have to be more careful when walking at night. Li Xiong looked at Ni Kai and Furong and reminded coldly. Ni Kai and Furong quickly bowed their heads and answered respectfully. When Zhuowen carried the half-dead Wei Zi and came in front of them, it finally attracted their attention. Li Xiong glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and couldn't help but frown. However, when Ni Kai and Furong saw Wei Zi in Zhuowen's hands, their faces changed greatly. Furong, in particular, was both shocked and angry. "It's you? The trash who failed the test?" The moment Furong saw Zhuowen, she couldn't help but exclaim. Obviously, she recognized Zhuowen. "How dare you? How dare you seriously injure junior brother Wei Zi?" And Ai Kai even shouted in an indifferent manner. "I'll settle accounts with you two later. Now shut up." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he ignored the flustered and exasperated Ai Kai and Furong. Instead, he looked at Li Xiong and said, "Senior, you must be the law enforcement elder. The man caught by these two women just now is the outer disciple who entered Ascension School with me. But these two women, because of their personal grudges, slandered my friend as an outsider who sneaked in. So, law enforcement elder, please investigate clearly." Li Xiong frowned slightly and said impatiently, "The law enforcement hall is closed today. If you have any objection, you can come to the law enforcement hall again tomorrow." "I'll try it again then." As Li Xiong said, he lifted his foot and bypassed Zhuowen, leaving. Zhuowen stretched out his hand and stopped Li Xiong. He said in a low voice, "Then, I want to ask, where is my friend Tang Hongmiao now? Why didn't I see him come out with you?" "You're really presumptuous. I said that I'll try it again tomorrow. Tang Hongmiao has been detained in the dark prison now. If you really have any objection, you can come again tomorrow and bring the evidence. Who will believe your one-sided statement?" Li Xiong shook his sleeve, and a strong airwave whizzed out and rushed to Zhuowen. He was really angry. This insignificant outer sect disciple actually tried to stop him again and again. Did he really think that he had a good temper? But soon, Li Xiong was shocked because he realized that Zhuowen stood in the same place and was as still as a mountain. He wasn't affected by his airwave at all. He was an elder, and his cultivation had reached the middle stage of the void god transformation. A mere outer disciple should be severely injured by his attack. Chapter 3751. You trash, you are courting death. When Ai Kai saw Zhuowen rushing towards her, she was not shocked but happy. She saw Zhuowen's Taoist root fail in the test. In her opinion, this guy's cultivation was absolutely trash. How could he be her opponent? Bang! However, in the next moment, Ai Kai was completely dumbfounded. She saw that Zhuowen had knocked her to the ground with a single punch. Then, Zhuowen stepped on Ai Kai's right hand and slowly took off the spiritual ring on her finger. Zhuowen used his divine thought to break the restriction on the surface of the spiritual ring and took out Tang Hongmiao's identity token that was taken away by Ai Kai. Law enforcing elder, this is Tang Hongmiao's identity token as an outer disciple. I think you, as an elder, know best whether this token is real or not. Zhuowen handed Tang Hongmiao's identity token to Li Xiong and said lightly. Li Xiong took the identity token and looked at Zhuowen deeply. Just now, when Zhuowen attacked, he felt that Zhuowen's cultivation was about the peak of embryonic god transformation, which was not much higher than Ai Kai. But this guy could defeat Ai Kai with one move, which showed that this guy was not simple. Furong, who was not far away and wanted to see Zhuowen make a fool of himself, was stunned. Li Xiong looked at the token in his hand and nodded. This is indeed the identity token of an outer disciple. It seems that we have wronged a good guy. Lin Yi, go to the dark prison and release Tang Hongmiao. A subordinate standing behind Li Xiong nodded and entered the law enforcement hall again. What's your name? Li Xiong looked at Zhuowen gently and asked. I am Zhuowen Yanxue, an outer disciple who just entered the sect. Zhuowen said neither humbly nor overbearingly. Then are you willing to be my last disciple? If you worship me as your teacher, you can become an inner disciple directly. Li Xiong said with a smile. Furong and Ai Kai's expressions changed drastically. In the Ascension sect, every elder would take in a closed-door disciple. Those who had good aptitude or were outstanding in other aspects and caught the eye of an elder would soar to the sky and become an inner court disciple. They would enjoy better resources and treatment. Of course, the probability of this happening was very small. After all, the aptitude of an outer court disciple was indeed much worse than an inner court disciple. At least in terms of cultivation aptitude, they were far inferior to inner sect disciples. This was innate. In the history of the Ascension sect, the outer sect disciples who were accepted as final disciples by the elders were basically those who were accepted as final disciples due to their talents in other aspects. For example, he was particularly outstanding in alchemy, array formation, and language. The reason why Li Xiong valued Zhuowen was naturally that Zhuowen's strength was far beyond his own realm. Enforcement elder, this person's ancestral Tao root is extremely inferior. I was the one that presided over the test today, and the natural endowment of his ancestral Tao root is insufficient. Ni Kai spoke hurriedly. Li Xiong frowned slightly, looked at Zhuowen and asked, "Is what she said true?" Zhuowen nodded and said, "My ancestral Tao root is indeed inferior." Li Xiong's eyes flickered as he took out a crystal ball from his spirit ring and passed it before Zhuowen. He said, "Zhuowen, extend your hand to the crystal ball. I want to see the grade of your ancestral Tao root with my own eyes." Zhuowen didn't refuse and placed his hand on the crystal ball. But without a doubt, the crystal ball didn't have any reaction. A trace of disappointment flashed past Li Xiong's eyes, and then he calmly put away the crystal ball and slowly closed his eyes. He didn't mention the matter of taking in a disciple again. Zhuowen sneered in his heart. This Li Xiong is really realistic. He decisively gave up on taking in a disciple when he saw that my ancestral Tao root was extremely inferior. However, Zhuowen didn't care because it didn't affect him whether Li Xiong took in a disciple or not. In a short while, Lin Yi escorted Tang Hongmiao out of the enforcement hall. Li Xiong released the shackles on Tang Hongmiao and passed him to Zhuowen. He said, "This matter is over. All of you can leave." Brother Zhuo, you saved me once again." Tang Hongmiao was moved to tears. Zhuowen didn't leave but said in a deep voice, "Enforcement elder," Ni Kai and Furong didn't distinguish between right and wrong and slandered Tang Hongmiao as a thief who snuck in. If I didn't arrive in time, the enforcement hall would have mistakenly killed a good person. Doesn't the enforcement elder have anything to say? Li Xiong snorted coldly and said, "It's already very late. If you really have other things to complain about, then come back tomorrow." After he finished speaking, Li Xiong didn't even look at Zhuowen as he brought his two subordinates and walked straight towards a small path. "Zhuanyanxue, you better not touch senior sister Ni Kai. Her brother is one of the top 10 experts in the inner sect. He's not someone you can afford to offend. If you know what's good for you, quickly let senior sister Ni Kai go." Furong shouted coldly. Tang Hongmiao revealed a worried expression and advised Zhuowen, "Brother Zhuo, Ni Kai's background isn't small. Even that Li Xiong didn't overly blame Ni Kai. Let's just forget about it." Ni Kai revealed a cold and arrogant expression and said coldly, "Trash, why aren't you taking your dirty foot away from my hand?" Zhuowen looked down at Ni Kai indifferently. His right foot suddenly exerted force and shattered the bones in Ni Kai's right arm. Ni Kai screamed miserably. Immediately after, Zhuowen stepped out again and landed on Ni Kai's left arm. Another bone-cracking sound was heard and Ni Kai's left arm was completely shattered. That intense pain rushed straight to Ni Kai's head, causing her to finally faint. "Threatening me?" Zhuowen coldly glanced at Furong, who was shivering in fear. He lifted Ni Kai up and threw her to Furong. "Remember, it's best not to provoke me and Brother Tang. Otherwise, next time, not only will I cripple your hands, I will also take your lives." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he left with Tang Hongmiao. Furong squatted beside Ni Kai and shivered. She didn't dare to get up for a long time until Ni Kai woke up. Zhuanyanxue, I want you to die. I want you to die. Ni Kai's eyes were filled with resentment. She stood up with difficulty and staggered back to her residence with Furong. If she wanted to recover her hands, she would need a long time of recuperation and precious medicinal treatment. This would delay a lot of cultivation time. In this fierce competition in the Ascension sect, it was very dangerous to delay one's cultivation time. It was very easy to be eliminated by others. The next day, just as the sky was about to brighten, Zhuowen opened the door. He planned to go to the sinkhole today and pass the first 10 sinkholes to obtain the token to enter the second floor of the Magical Abilities Pavilion. When he left his residence, he met an uninvited guest. Zhouji hurriedly walked over and stopped Zhuowen. Junior brother Zhua, did you cripple Ni Kai's hands yesterday? Zhouji asked in a low voice. They indiscriminately occupied our residence and slandered Brother Tang, so I taught them a lesson. Zhuowen calmly said. Zhouji said somewhat anxiously, Junior brother Zhua, you're really in trouble now. Ni Kai has an older brother who is one of the top 10 inner sect disciples. Furong has a close relationship with Lu Yong. Lu Yong has just become an inner sect disciple, so there's nothing to be afraid of. The main thing is Ni Kai's brother. Senior brother Zhou, if you're looking for me because of this, then there's no need to say anything. If Ni Kai's brother really comes looking for trouble with me, I'm not afraid. Zhuowen said as he walked past Zhouji. Zhouji looked at Zhuowen's back with a complicated gaze. He recalled the scene of Zhuowen beating him up. Without a doubt, Zhuowen's strength was terrifying. Chapter 3752. In the north of Ascension sect, the number of mountains was much less. Valleys stood there. In the core area of these valleys was an unbelievably huge pit. This huge pit's shape was irregular. Inside the huge pit there were many small irregular pits. Zhuowen counted. From near to far there were a total of 81 small pits. He knew that this was the Ascension sect's extremely famous trial ground, the Heavenly Pit. There were not many disciples near the Heavenly Pit. The surroundings were rather deserted. The entrance to the Heavenly Pit was a long passageway. After Zhuowen walked along the passageway for over 10 minutes, he arrived at a simple and crude stone room. In the stone room there was only a stone table, a stone bench, and a statue that was half a person's height emitting light. Apart from that, beside the stone room's wall was a stone bed that was cut out. On the stone bed, a white-haired old man sat upright. When Zhuowen arrived at the stone room, the old man slowly opened his eyes. He glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and said, "You're here to challenge the Heavenly Pit?" "Yes." Zhuowen cupped his fist. He could sense the powerful aura faintly emitted from the old man's body. This aura gave him a feeling of extreme danger. This feeling was much stronger than Elder Ing Yen who intercepted him back then. Without a doubt, this old man was a cultivator even stronger than Elder Ing Yen. You should only be an outer sect disciple, right? With your cultivation, isn't it too forceful to plan on challenging the Heavenly Pit? The Heavenly Pit is filled with danger. It's very easy to lose your life. The old man sized up Zhuowen and actually spoke to remind him. Many thanks for the reminder, Senior. I'm here to be able to enter the second level of the Divine Abilities Pavilion. I want to challenge the first 10 Heavenly Pits to obtain the proof token. Zhuowen answered. So you're here to enter the second level of the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Since that's the case, then enter that passageway. Also, before you enter, I still have to remind you. Inside the Heavenly Pit there are 9 small pits as a whole. In other words, if you want to leave the Heavenly Pit, then you have to challenge 9 small pits consecutively. You have to cheat. Otherwise, you won't be able to leave the sinkhole. Also, as you continue to pass through the sinkholes will become more and more difficult. You'd better act according to your ability. The old man said indifferently. Zhuowen was startled. He didn't think that this pit would have such a rule. If he wanted to obtain the proof token, he would need to pass through 10 pits. Didn't that mean that he would need to pass through 18 pits before he could obtain the proof token to enter the second level of the Divine Ability Pavilion? This rule of the Mystical Ability Pavilion was truly a trap. Zhuowen cupped his hands at the old man and walked straight into the passage the old man had pointed out. Not long after, Zhuowen walked out of the tunnel and arrived at the bottom of a huge pit. He looked up and saw the rays of light falling from the sky, but they did not bring much light to the huge pit. Zhuowen knew that this was the interior of the sinkhole. Inside this huge sinkhole there were many smaller sinkholes. Moreover, these pits were divided into 9 piles, and each pile was made up of 9 pits. Zhuowen also realized that these piles of small pits were gradually growing towards the center of the huge pit. Zhuowen was currently in one of the 9 small pits at the edge. Let's try entering this pile of small pits first. Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he jumped into the small pits below. Boom! The moment he entered the first small pit, a powerful pressure surged into his body like a tide. Zhuowen couldn't get used to it and knelt on one knee on the ground. However, he quickly got used to it and slowly stood up. What a terrifying pressure! Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. With this level of pressure, if a embryonic god transformation realm cultivator wasn't prepared, they would be injured directly. At the same time, Zhuowen realized that the chaotic energy in this small pit was much denser than in other areas of the Ascension sect. Zhuowen didn't even need to absorb it. After the chaotic energy entered his acupuncture points, it automatically turned into broken divine power and surged into his body. Junior brother, you actually got used to the pressure in this sinkhole so quickly. You're really amazing. Not far away, a surprised voice sounded. Zhuowen looked over and saw a young man sitting cross-legged on a rock dozens of meters to his left. Apart from that, he also noticed that there were dozens of figures sitting cross-legged in the small pit, cultivating. The auras of these people were quite strong, and the weakest one was at the spirit transformation realm. Zhuowen knew that these people were all inner disciples. After all, before he came to the sinkhole, he already knew that there were very few outer disciples who came to the sinkhole to train. Even if there were, only the top 10 outer disciples dared to come. Wouldn't the other disciples be courting death? I've trained before, so I got used to it quickly. Zhuowen laughed and planned to fool them. Haha, I see. My name is Zhou Xian, and I'm the disciple of the 7th elder from the main peak. I wonder which elder's disciple are you? The young man jumped down from the rock and slowly walked towards Zhuowen as he asked curiously. To him, Zhuowen was an unfamiliar face. He had never seen Zhuowen before. I'm Zhuowen Yanxue, an outer disciple. I just entered yesterday. Zhuowen said truthfully. As soon as he said that, the rest of the people in the small pit opened their eyes and looked at Zhuowen strangely. You said that you're an outer disciple, and you just entered? Zhou Xian sized up Zhuowen with a strange expression. Senior brother Zhou, is there a problem? Zhuowen said with a frown. There's no problem. Actually, those who come to the sinkhole to train are mostly inner disciples and core disciples. There are very few outer disciples. As far as I know, only the top 10 outer disciples, Xing Shuwen, Liao Xingzhou, and Sihui occasionally come here to train. The rest of the outer disciples are basically not seen. Zhou Xian said with a smile. Zhuowen saw that Zhou Xian did not put on any airs as an inner disciple and had a good impression of him. He looked around and asked in a low voice, Senior brother Zhou, why are you all training here? Isn't it said that there are 81 small pits in this sinkhole, and every 9 small pits form a group? Disciples who enter the sinkhole, don't they have to pass through a group before they can leave? This is only the first small pit. Are you planning to train until it's dark? Zhou Xian looked at Zhuowen strangely and laughed dryly. Junior brother Zhuo, it seems that you really don't know anything. That rule is actually only for outer disciples. We inner disciples have a teleportation array in our identity token. As long as we enter the sinkhole and can't pass the trial, we only need to spend a certain amount of contribution points to activate the teleportation array in the token, and we can safely leave the sinkhole. As for outer disciples, they are not so lucky. Chapter 3753. Junior Apprentice Brother Zhuo. This Heavenly Pit's first group of 9 pits is the least difficult. With your strength, it's probably very difficult to clear the first group today. You should use the transmission array in my identity token to leave this place first. Next time, you have to remember not to be so reckless. After all, your identity token doesn't have a transmission array. Zhou Xian patted Zhuowen's shoulder and took out his identity token, planning to hand it over to Zhuowen. Zhuowen was stunned. He did not think that this Zhou Xian was actually a goody two-shoes, actually wanting to help him the first time they met. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, "Senior Apprentice Brother Zhou, I appreciate your good intentions. I came to train in the first place, so I naturally have to give it a try first. If I leave here without even trying, wouldn't that be too embarrassing?" Seeing Zhuowen's insistence, Zhou Xian nodded and took back the identity token. Truly a reckless fellow. An outer sect disciple who just entered the sect dares to come to the heavenly pit to die. You're still the only one. Not far away, a youth with a scar slowly stood up and gave Zhuowen a rather disdainful glance. Stomping his foot, he leaped out of the first pit and stepped into the second pit. He's the outer sect disciple ranked number 1 in the top 10, Xing Shuwen. His personality is more egotistical. Don't look at how he's just an outer sect disciple. His strength is very formidable and can already rival ordinary inner sect disciples. If not for his Dao root being bad, he would have long been an inner sect disciple already. Zhou Xian explained. Zhuo nodded and asked, "Senior Apprentice Brother Zhou, is the chaos energy all the same in this group of pits?" "No, the chaos energy in this group's last pit is the thickest. It's just that the pressure of that pit is too terrifying. Even I can only stay for half an incense stick's time. That's already my limit. People like us cultivate for half a day in the first pit first, then slowly move towards the pits at the back to cultivate. Only half an incense stick's time before night falls will we enter the last pit. This is the best cultivation efficiency," Zhou Xian said with a slight smile. Speaking up to hear, Zhou Xian said in a rather mysterious voice, "Junior Apprentice Brother Zhuo, cultivating in this heavenly pit has another great benefit. That is that you don't have to fear the heaven-crushing grand tribulation." "What? Aren't you afraid of the heaven-crushing tribulation?" Zhuowen was stunned. Yes, this sinkhole had existed for a long time. It had existed in the Sky Dragon mountain range since the establishment of the Ascension sect. No one knows how this sinkhole was formed. In addition to the strange pressure and the rich chaotic energy, the heavenly pit also has some kind of extremely mysterious domain. This domain can interfere with the heaven-crushing tribulation. The ancestors of the Ascension sect have already verified this. The heavenly pit's domain was enough to withstand any great tribulation below the heaven-crushing 5th transformation. In other words, as long as a cultivator below the 5th heaven-crushing transformation stage broke through in the heavenly pit, they would be able to easily avoid the heaven-crushing tribulation. That's why we inner sect disciples like it. It's because he's cultivating in the sinkhole, Zhou Xian whispered. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed, but his heart was filled with excitement. Wasn't he most afraid of the heaven-crushing tribulation? Every time there was a heaven-crushing tribulation, Zhuowen would always be on tenterhooks and tremble with fear. He was afraid that he would be struck to death by the tribulation. After all, his heaven-crushing tribulation was too terrifying. It was far more terrifying than those of the same cultivation level. At the same time, Zhuowen was also slightly worried. With his heaven-crushing tribulation, could this sinkhole's domain really help him withstand it? My heaven-crushing tribulation after advancing to the spirit transformation stage shouldn't be more powerful than a normal cultivator's heaven-crushing fifth transformation stage tribulation. This sinkhole's domain should be able to withstand it. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He decided to break through to the spirit transformation stage in this sinkhole. The chaotic energy here is still not rich enough. I'll go to the 9th sinkhole to take a look. Zhuowen thought to himself. He bid farewell to Zhou Xian and headed to the next sinkhole. This junior brother Zhua is really like a newborn calf that isn't afraid of tigers. The sinkholes behind him will only become more and more terrifying. How long can he last if he goes there? Zhou Xian shook his head and returned to his original rock. He sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. Although he was enthusiastic, he wasn't going to follow Zhuowen around and protect him. He had already given Zhuowen advice, but the latter didn't listen. If he died in this sinkhole, it would be his own fault. It had nothing to do with him. When Zhuowen jumped into the 2nd sinkhole, he could clearly feel that the pressure in the 2nd sinkhole had increased by 50%. Fortunately, Zhuowen was prepared. Therefore, when he landed in the sinkhole, he didn't end up in a sorry state. There were clearly fewer people in the 2nd sinkhole. There were only about 10 people in it. A piece of trash like you actually followed me. You really overestimated yourself. Who do you think you are? Just obediently stay in the 1st sinkhole. Coming to the 2nd sinkhole? I think you're just courting death. Not far away, Tsing Shuwen noticed Zhuowen and couldn't help but mock him. Zhuowen wasn't satisfied with the 2nd sinkhole. He planned to head to the next sinkhole, but he stopped when he heard Tsing Shuwen's mocking words. You know me. Zhuowen looked at Tsing Shuwen and spoke with an unpleasant tone. This was the first time Tsing Shuwen opened his mouth to mock him. Zhuowen only treated it as this person's nature. His mouth was more venomous, so he didn't care. But this person actually grabbed onto him and didn't let him go, mocking him wantonly. Zhuowen realized that this person was clearly targeting him. You shouldn't know that junior apprentice sister Ni Kai is my Dao companion, right? Tsing Shuwen's gaze stared at Zhuowen. A cold light flickered, killing intent released without concealing it. Zhuowen already understood why this Tsing Shuwen suddenly targeted him. It turned out that it was because of that Ni Kai. What? You want to take revenge for Ni Kai? Zhuowen said coolly. Tsing Shuwen laughed coldly and said, Hoo, originally, I was waiting to find you after leaving the sinkhole. But you, this trash, came to the sinkhole yourself. Then there's no need for me to take action. You can't pass through the sinkhole today either. Dead for sure. Finished talking, Tsing Shuwen sat back down on his seat, no longer paying attention to Zhuowen. Since you're not pursuing the matter, doesn't mean that I won't pursue it, Zhuowen said coldly. Tsing Shuwen's eyes narrowed and he said, What do you mean by trash? You keep saying that I'm trash, and you even insulted me for no reason. Could it be that you want me to just swallow this insult? Zhuowen said coldly. Tsing Shuwen laughed loudly and said with ridicule, You didn't even pass the test of Dao Foundation. Calling you trash is already showing favor to trash. You're still not convinced? But as soon as Tsing Shuwen finished speaking, he realized that something was wrong. Because Zhuowen's figure in front of him had disappeared. At the instant he turned his head, he immediately saw a fist enlarging in front of his eyes, and in the end it fiercely landed on his face. Poochie! Tsing Shuwen fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood that was mixed with a few broken teeth. You're in the sinkhole, your speed. How can you still be so fast? Tsing Shuwen struggled to get up, and he looked at Zhuowen who stood in front of him with disbelief. Just now, the distance between him and Zhuowen was over a dozen meters, but in the blink of an eye, Zhuowen had appeared in front of him and punched him. If it was in the outside world, this kind of speed could only be considered ordinary, but this was the sinkhole and everywhere was filled with powerful pressure. In here, it was already very impressive to be able to walk without flushing or panting, but there was actually someone who could move at high speed. Chapter 37:54. As for the other disciples in the second pit, they were stunned when they saw that. They all saw Zhuowen's movement just now. His speed was indeed fast. To be able to move so fast in the sinkhole, they knew that he was an expert. Therefore, the way they looked at Zhuowen was full of respect, while the way they looked at Xing Shuwen was full of pity. This hothead is really stupid. How dare he offend such an expert? Xing Shuwen's face was red, but his heart was filled with bitterness. He originally thought that Zhuowen was strong, but he was only slightly stronger than Enai Kai and far from him. However, he did not expect that his strength was completely inferior to that person, and now he was being humiliated. This is the Ascension sect. Do you dare to kill someone here? Xing Shuwen said fearfully. Are you afraid? Zhuowen looked down at Xing Shuwen and asked indifferently. Xing Shuwen was silent. Zhuowen was right. He was indeed afraid. In the sinkhole, it was normal for disciples who entered the trial to be killed or injured. Even if he was killed by Zhuowen here, the sect would not pursue the matter. However, he was even more unwilling to beg Zhuowen for mercy. If that happened, wouldn't he become a joke? Zhuowen moved his right foot away and said indifferently, "You're not qualified for me to kill you. Killing you will only dirty my hands. Get lost." You, Xing Shuwen was furious. Zhuowen glanced at Xing Shuwen from the corner of his eyes and grinned. What? You dare to provoke me? Think carefully. If you provoke me again, I will really kill you. Xing Shuwen's body trembled. A chill rushed from the bottom of his feet to his head. He obediently walked back to his original position and did not say another word. You're indeed a piece of trash. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he leaped out and swept towards the next pit. The other disciples around him laughed, which made Xing Shuwen feel even more humiliated. Xing Shuwen clenched his fists. His eyes were filled with rage. His dignity was ruthlessly trampled on by Zhuowen's last sentence. However, he was powerless to resist and didn't even dare to refute. Zhuowen gave him too much pressure. He knew that Zhuowen would really kill him. When Zhuowen reached the 8th crater, the pressure here was 8 times that of the first crater. Zhuowen's movements were also affected. The primal chaos energy here was exceptionally dense, which made Zhuowen quite satisfied. Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the 8th crater. Terrifying cyclones swirled around his body as he began to absorb the surrounding chaotic energy. About 2 hours later, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. The energy here was indeed abundant, but after Zhuowen absorbed it, he knew that if he wanted to smoothly break through to the divine fetal transformation realm, he would need at least 3 days. He needed a place with more chaotic energy. Thus, he rushed towards the 9th pit. Boom! The pressure in the 9th pit was truly terrifying. When he entered the pit, the pressure smashed onto his body, causing the air to explode. Zhuowen had no choice but to circulate the primordial technique. His entire body surged with purple energy in order to withstand the terrifying pressure. At the same time, he could feel the extremely dense chaotic energy around him. The chaotic energy here was much denser than the 8th crater. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He knew that with the amount of chaotic energy in this small pit, he only needed half a day to successfully break through. Thus, Zhuowen began to sit cross-legged on a rock, silently absorbing the chaotic energy in the area. After half a day, Zhuowen's aura became more and more vast and finally reached its peak. A thunderous sound rang out from Zhuowen's body. His aura underwent a transformation. It was as vast and boundless as the ocean. Zhuowen opened his eyes and slowly stood up. He silently sensed the changes that had occurred after his breakthrough. At this moment, he had broken through to the spirit transformation stage. At this moment, his soul had undergone a mysterious change. The power of his soul did not become stronger, but its essence seemed to have changed. It could be said that his soul was now more suited to the environment of the 100 domains without any abnormalities. Thus, he could unleash even more power from his soul. This was the change in essence brought about by the spirit transformation stage. At the same time, Zhuowen could also feel that the shattered divine power in his body had reached a new level. There was no doubt that his strength had undergone an earth-shattering change during this advancement. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, Zhuowen felt an extremely terrifying tribulation cloud appear above the sinkhole. The tribulation cloud gathered together and formed two black holes. Within the black holes, terrifying tribulation energy was brewing. Zhuowen knew that his spirit transformation stage's heaven-crushing tribulation had arrived. However, what surprised Zhuowen was that the aura of the spirit transformation stage heaven-crushing tribulation was much weaker than when he had just broken through to the heaven-crushing tribulation. Zhuowen pondered for a moment. He knew that it might be because he had just broken through to the heaven-crushing stage. Thus, the heaven-crushing tribulation that was brewing was naturally extremely terrifying. However, after breaking through to the heaven-crushing stage, the heaven-crushing tribulation would naturally not be so terrifying. Boom! 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 Within the two black holes, countless dazzling energy poured out and bombarded the pit like rain. The power was extremely terrifying. All the disciples in the pit could not help but look up at the sky. Their eyes were filled with shock. What a terrifying heaven-crushing tribulation! This is at least the Void God transformation stage heaven-crushing tribulation, right? I wonder which senior brother has broken through to the Void God transformation stage. Within the pit, most of the disciples were discussing spiritedly. They were not very worried that this heaven-crushing tribulation would affect the pit too much. The pit's domain was extremely powerful. It could easily block all heaven-crushing tribulation below the 5th transformation stage. Thus, they were not worried that they would be affected by this heaven-crushing tribulation. Sure enough, when the terrifying tribulation struck the sinkhole, an invisible force appeared in the sinkhole and neutralized all the tribulation that came crashing down. How mysterious! Is this the heaven-crushing tribulation's domain? Zhuowen looked at the heaven-crushing tribulation. When the heaven-crushing tribulation reached the pit and disappeared, his eyes were filled with shock. This pit was really a holy land for breakthroughs. The heaven-crushing tribulation lasted for a few hours. Then, it gradually dissipated. The tribulation clouds in the sky also disappeared. Zhuowen looked up at the sky. He realized that the sky was about to darken. He knew that he did not have time to break through the pit today. He could only wait until tomorrow. Huh? Junior brother Zhuo, you've actually reached the 9th pit. Suddenly, several figures fell into the 9th pit. One of them exclaimed in surprise. Zhuowen looked over and realized that the person who had spoken was the inner court disciple he had met in the 1st pit, Zhou Xian. Senior brother Zhou. Zhuowen greeted with a smile. Junior brother Zhuo, do you know who was transcending the tribulation just now? I saw that the direction of the heaven-crushing tribulation was in this 9th pit. You arrived earlier than us. Did you see who it was clearly? Zhou Xian asked mysteriously. Zhuowen shook his head and said, Senior brother Zhou, I also just arrived, so I don't know who is transcending the tribulation. Is that so? What a pity! Zhou Xian was slightly disappointed. Chapter 3755. When Zhuowen returned to his residence, he saw Tang Hongmiao standing outside his courtyard anxiously. After Tang Hongmiao saw Zhuowen, He hurriedly walked forward, and his face was filled with anxiety as he said, "Brother Zhuo, the situation is bad." "What's wrong?" Zhuowen asked in surprise. Tang Hongmiao sighed and said, "Brother Zhuowen, ever since you beat up Nai Kai, I went to check on her brother's information and found out that her brother's name is Nai Ju. He's ranked 5th in the inner sect and his cultivation has reached the heaven-trampling change. His strength is extremely terrifying. Moreover, Nai Ju has already sent out a message. In 3 days, he will come out of seclusion and challenge you to a duel in the life and death ring. This is the letter of challenge that he just sent over." As he spoke, Tang Hongmiao passed the letter of challenge to Zhuowen. Although the competition in the Ascension sect was intense, disciples were allowed to fight with each other. However, they were not allowed to kill each other. That was the rule. However, there were also some enemies who were allowed to fight to the death in the life and death ring. On the life and death ring, one would fight to the death. Nai Ju had invited Zhuowen to the life and death ring to kill him. "Brother Zhuowen, Nai Ju is too powerful. You can't really go to the life and death ring. As long as you don't accept this letter of challenge, even if Nai Ju is an inner sect disciple, he won't be able to kill you in the sect," Tang Hongmiao advised. Zhuowen smiled and took the letter of challenge from Tang Hongmiao. He then wrote his name on the letter of challenge. Brother Zhuowen, you." Tang Hongmiao was in disbelief. "I'll accept this letter of challenge. In 3 days, on the life and death ring, I want Nai Ju's life." In Nai Ju's residence, both of Nai Ju's hands were wrapped in some kind of black ointment and her face was extremely gloomy. Her brother, Nai Ju, had invited the best pharmacist in the Ascension sect. However, he informed her that her hands were too badly damaged and she would need at least 3 months to fully recover. In other words, she would not be able to cultivate in these 3 months and could only stare blankly like a fool. "Zhuanyanxue, you bastard! If you don't die, I won't be able to rest in peace." Nai Kai gnashed her teeth. She hated Zhuowen to the core and wished that she could make Zhuowen die in front of her. Creak! The door to her room was pushed open and Furong rushed in. "Senior sister Nai Kai." Zhuanyanxue accepted the challenge. Hibiscus said excitedly. Nai Kai's eyes lit up as she revealed a vicious smile. "Haha, he's really overestimating himself. He actually accepted the challenge. My brother will definitely kill him." Furong hurriedly chimed in, "Of course. With senior brother Nai Ju's strength, he's ranked at the top of the inner court, let alone Zhuanyanxue, who's merely an outer court disciple." 3 days later, Big Brother Nai Ju would come out of seclusion, and that would be the death of this bastard. At that time, we'll just have to watch a good show. Nai Kai snorted coldly. Furong also revealed a vicious smile. She recalled how Zhuowen had scared her to the point of wetting her pants. Even now, she felt ashamed and wished that Zhuowen would die without a burial ground. On the second day, Zhuowen went to the crater again. He planned to pass through the second group of craters today and obtain a proof token to enter the second level of the ability pavilion. When he entered the passageway that led to the crater again, he met the old man in the stone room again. The old man slowly opened his eyes and sized up Zhuowen. He said indifferently, "Not bad. Yesterday you passed the first group of craters on your first visit. Are you going to cultivate in the first group of craters today?" Zhuowen shook his head and said, "Senior, I want to enter the second group of craters." The old man slowly narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "You said you want to enter the second group of craters? I have to remind you that the pressure in the second group of craters is much stronger than the first group." "Yes, I originally planned to enter the second group of craters today and obtain a proof token. I want to get the proof token from you, right?" Zhuowen said with a faint smile. The old man looked deeply at Zhuowen and said expressionlessly, "You really know how to talk. I just don't know if your strength is really as strong as you think." The second passageway on the left leads to the second group of craters. Go in. Zhuowen cupped his fists towards the old man and entered the second passageway on the left. Sigh, are all outer sect disciples so arrogant now? The old man watched Zhuowen disappear into the passageway and couldn't help but shake his head. Zhuowen walked out of the passageway and once again arrived at the vast crater. He discovered that he was at the other side of the crater today. On his left was the first group of craters from yesterday. On his right, closer to the center of the crater, this should be the second group of craters. When Zhuowen jumped into the first crater, a terrifying pressure surged into his body like a tide. Although Zhuowen was prepared, he still staggered and almost lost his footing. What a powerful pressure! The pressure in the first crater of the second group is even stronger than the pressure in the ninth crater of the first group. On the other hand, the primal chaos energy is really dense. Zhuowen's eyes revealed excitement. According to the amount of primal chaos energy here, he should be able to advance to the spirit transformation intermediate stage in less than a month. Ever since he advanced to the spirit transformation intermediate stage, Zhuowen discovered that his need for primal chaos energy had increased exponentially. If he wanted to advance to the spirit transformation intermediate stage, the amount of primal chaos energy he needed was even more terrifying than when he advanced to the spirit transformation intermediate stage. If he cultivated normally, Zhuowen knew that he would need to spend a lot of energy and time to advance. However, the Ascension sect had this crater, which was enough to shorten his cultivation time. Let's head straight to the ninth crater. Zhuowen's eyes were like lightning as he took large strides forward. When he entered the seventh crater, the surrounding pressure seemed to have materialized. Zhuowen's footsteps also became messy and heavy. Zhuowen took a deep breath and started to circulate the immemorial primordial technique. Instantly, his entire body was enveloped by a mysterious purple energy. His footsteps became strong and powerful once again. Boom! When Zhuowen entered the eighth crater, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed as he saw a figure. It was a beautiful young lady. Her skin was white, her nose was straight, and her face was delicate. When Zhuowen entered the crater, the young lady slowly opened her eyes. She sized up Zhuowen. When she saw that Zhuowen was wearing the outer court disciple's uniform, her eyes were filled with shock. However, she did not plan to talk to Zhuowen. Instead, she closed her eyes and continued to cultivate. Zhuowen glanced at the young lady and did not plan to speak to her. Instead, he continued to rush towards the ninth crater. Bang! 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 The pressure in the ninth crater was extremely terrifying. When it crushed onto Zhuowen's body, it produced terrifying, explosive sounds. Zhuowen frowned his brows. He had to circulate the immemorial primordial technique in the ninth crater. Otherwise, he would definitely suffer from internal injuries from the pressure. However, Zhuowen was gratified by the fact that the primal chaos energy here was extremely powerful. He estimated that he would be able to break through to the spirit transformation intermediate stage in less than half a month if he cultivated here. He found a secluded corner and started to cultivate peacefully. Although the pressure here was extremely terrifying and forced Zhuowen to circulate the immemorial primordial technique at all times, it was extremely difficult. Chapter 3756. After half a day, Zhuowen sensed that someone had entered the ninth crater. He slowly opened his eyes and saw that the beautiful woman he met in the eighth crater had landed in the ninth crater. You actually stayed in the ninth crater for half a day? The woman looked at Zhuowen with surprise in her beautiful eyes and spoke for the first time. She knew very well how terrifying the pressure in the ninth crater was. Even she could only cultivate here for 8 hours, but this guy could stay for half a day, which was beyond her expectations. I was just lucky, Zhuowen replied calmly. My name is Zhong Xinyan. Are you really an outer disciple? The woman took the initiative to report her name. Zhuowen nodded and said, "Yes, my name is Zhuan Yanxue." After that, Zhuowen closed his eyes again and did not intend to continue the conversation with the woman. Zhong Xinyan was quite tactful. Seeing that Zhuowen had resumed his cultivation, she found a random spot and began to cultivate as well. After 8 hours, Zhong Xinyan slowly opened her eyes. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat, her face was pale, and her delicate body was trembling. 8 hours was already her limit. If she continued, her body would not be able to withstand the pressure here. When she looked at Zhuowen, she was surprised to find that Zhuowen was still sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. His breathing was calm, and he did not seem to be unable to hold on. Is this guy a monster? Seeing that Zhuowen was still persevering, Zhong Xinyan gritted her teeth and closed her eyes again to continue her cultivation. After an hour, Zhong Xinyan's body was drenched in sweat, revealing her seductive figure. She spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, trembling violently. Damn it! I've reached my limit. I can't walk anymore. I'll take out my identity token and activate the teleportation array to leave this place first. Zhong Xinyan was helpless. She could not even move now. She had to leave, or she would really die here. But when she touched her waist, she found that it was empty. She had forgotten to bring her identity token today. It's over. Zhong Xinyan suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, completely unconscious. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the sky and realized that night was about to fall. He stood up with a smile on his face. The primal chaos energy here was very dense and was very suitable for him to cultivate. According to his current speed, he would probably be able to break through to the spirit transformation intermediate stage in 10 days. Just as Zhuowen was about to leave, he noticed Zhong Xinyan lying on the ground with a weak aura. He was stunned. Zhong Xinyan had already reached her limit. Why hadn't she left yet? Zhuowen came to Zhong Xinyan's side and found that the latter had fainted. Her aura was extremely weak, and she was on the verge of death. Looks like it's not an act, Zhuowen thought for a while. Then, he carried Zhong Xinyan on his shoulder and jumped out of the 9th pit. When he returned to the stone room, he placed Zhong Xinyan to the side and walked in front of the old man. Senior, I've passed through the second group of sinkholes. I've passed through more than 10 sinkholes. I should be able to obtain a proof token now, right? Zhuowen said calmly. The old man sized up Zhuowen and straightforwardly took out a token and handed it to Zhuowen. This is the proof token. With this, you can enter the second level of the Mystical Abilities Pavilion. After Zhuowen received the proof token, he cupped his hands towards the old man and left without looking back. The old man looked at Zhong Xinyan, who was lying on the ground, and Zhuowen, who had decisively left. He opened his mouth and wanted to ask Zhuowen if he wanted to take Zhong Xinyan away. However, Zhuowen left too quickly and disappeared in the blink of an eye. This child isn't simple. Is he really an outer disciple? Even Zhong Xinyan, who was ranked second in the inner court, was in such a miserable state. Yet, this fellow acted as if nothing had happened and even carried Zhong Xinyan out. The old man's eyes emitted an unbearable light as he muttered to himself. It seems that the Ascension sect is no longer as strong as before. They didn't even discover such a genius. But it's fine. I'll keep an eye on such a genius. Don't tell anyone else first, lest other sects covet him. After he finished speaking, the old man noticed that Zhong Xinyan had woken up. Zhong Xinyan's eyes were filled with confusion. She looked around and rubbed her head. She said in pain, "Where is this? Wasn't I in the 9th pit of the second group?" "Senior, it's you. I've already left the sinkhole?" Zhong Xinyan saw the old man and immediately sobered up. She exclaimed in surprise. "Zhong Xinyan, you're safe now. This time, it's all thanks to Zhuan Yanxue. Otherwise, you might have really died in the sinkhole," the old man said indifferently. "Zhuan Yanxue?" Senior, are you talking about that outer disciple? Zhong Xinyan recalled the outer disciple she met in the ninth pit. She still remembered that the fellow cultivated in the ninth pit for half a day with ease. In other words, it was that outer disciple who brought her out of the sinkhole. When the sun rose the next day, Zhuowen went to the Divine Abilities Pavilion early in the morning. Elder Lian Yu, this is the proof token. I can enter the second level now, right? Zhuowen handed the token he obtained from the old man to the manager of the Divine Abilities Pavilion, Lian Yu. What? You actually went through the first 2 groups of sinkholes? Lian Yu took the proof token and was in disbelief. She knew that the sinkhole was divided into groups of 9. In order to obtain a proof token, an outer disciple had to go through the first 2 groups of sinkholes. Inner disciple, on the other hand, could activate the teleportation array after entering the 10th pit because of the identity token. Lian Yu looked at the back of the figure walking toward the second level of the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Her beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity and interest. This outer disciple was not simple. It had only been a few days, and he had already obtained a proof token. This was something that even inner disciple could not do. After Zhuowen entered the second level of the Divine Abilities Pavilion, he realized that there were significantly fewer Divine Abilities manuals on the second level. Moreover, there were also significantly fewer disciples. Only inner disciple and above could enter the second level of the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Therefore, those who could enter were basically inner disciple. There was not a single outer disciple in sight. When Zhuowen entered the second level, he immediately attracted their attention. Zhuowen did not care about the strange gazes of the other inner disciple. Instead, he took the time to browse through the various divine abilities on the second level. There were about 500 to 600 divine abilities manuals here. Basically, all of them were level 2 divine abilities. Zhuowen even found an incomplete level 3 divine ability in a corner. This was the only incomplete level 3 divine ability. It was called Bright Snow Spear. It was severely incomplete. Only the first half was left. When Zhuowen picked up the Bright Snow Shackling Spear, the supreme word stone in his divine soul instantly reacted. The purple energy materialized into a figure holding a spear. The figure began to dance continuously. When the figure finished practicing the first half of the Bright Snow Spear, not only did it not stop, but it continued to practice the spear art. Furthermore, its spear art became more and more exquisite and terrifying. Chapter 3757. When Zhuowen finished digesting all the divine abilities on the second floor of the Divine Abilities Pavilion, his primordial soldier mantra and primordial movement technique had both reached the peak of rank 3. In the Ascension sect, divine abilities of this level were considered important scriptures. It was difficult for inner disciples to learn them, and only core disciples could come into contact with them. Of course, if one had enough contribution points, even outer disciples could exchange for divine abilities of this level. However, the required contribution points were extremely terrifying, and it was definitely not something an ordinary cultivator could achieve. In addition, in the dangerous trial of the crater, after proving oneself, one could enter the corresponding floor of the Divine Abilities Pavilion and borrow the divine abilities of the corresponding level. Zhuowen looked up and realized that it was getting late, so he was ready to leave the Divine Abilities Pavilion. When he walked out of the Divine Abilities Pavilion, he found Tang Hongmiao curled up outside. Beside Tang Hongmiao stood a young man with an overbearing bearing. Looking at his clothes, he should be an inner disciple. "Brother Tang, what's the matter?" Zhuowen walked forward and greeted Tang Hongmiao. Brother Zhuo. Tang Hongmiao looked at the young man beside him with fear, and he stopped talking. "You're Zhuan Yanxue? You don't look special, but senior brother Ni Ju personally issued a challenge to you. Where did you get the face to accept senior brother Ni Ju's challenge? A piece of trash like you isn't qualified to fight with senior brother Ni Ju. The young man's eyes were filled with arrogance as he walked out and blocked Zhuowen's path. The entrance of the Divine Abilities Pavilion was originally a place filled with people, and there were many disciples. When the young man blocked Zhuowen and wanted to find fault with him, many disciples stopped to watch the show. Even the Divine Abilities Pavilion's manager, Lian Yu, leaned against the door and watched with interest. It's inner disciple Yong Hu. He's second only to the top 10 inner disciples. In terms of strength, he's ranked 11th in the inner sect. Why would such an expert suddenly block an outer disciple? Didn't you hear Yong Hu's name? His name is Zhuan. Wasn't there a rumor that Ni Ju issued a death challenge to an outer disciple? That outer disciple's name is Zhuan. F***ck, are you serious? Ni Ju was an expert who was ranked 5th in the inner sect's top 10. Why would he issue a challenge to an outer sect disciple? Isn't this like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken? The surrounding people were discussing incessantly. They looked at Zhuowen with eyes that were filled with realization, curiosity, pity, and disdain. You're saying that you want to fight me on Ni Ju's behalf? Zhuowen asked indifferently. Replace Ni Ju? You think too highly of yourself. I came here to cripple your limbs, and when the deathmatch starts tomorrow, I'll personally kill you. Why would I need senior brother Ni Ju to do it? Yong Hu said with disdain. I have no enmity with you, but you're going to kill me for Ni Ju just because I offended him? Zhuowen squinted his eyes as his killing intent blazed. He. You're just an outer disciple. If it weren't for the sect's rules, I would have killed you right here and now. Yong Hu sneered. All right, I've wasted too much time talking to you. I'll break your limbs first before we talk. Yong Hu snorted coldly. Just as he was about to attack, a beautiful figure blocked his way. Yong Hu, this is the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Don't mess around. If you insist on making a move, don't blame me for being impolite. This was an extremely beautiful young woman. Although she was wearing loose and simple sect clothes, it still couldn't hide her seductive figure. Zhong Xinyan? You? Why are you here? The moment Yong Hu saw this female disciple, his expression changed, and his eyes were filled with fear. Zhuowen also looked at the woman in front of him in surprise. Wasn't she Zhong Xinyan who was unconscious in the crater yesterday? He was the one who carried her out and saved her life. This is the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Why can't I be here? Zhong Xinyan said indifferently. Yong Hu said with an unfriendly expression, Zhong Xinyan, I'm not causing trouble in the Divine Abilities Pavilion, but outside the pavilion. The sect doesn't have a rule that forbids sparring outside the Divine Abilities Pavilion. Could it be that you've taken a fancy to this kid and are here to help him? After saying this, even Yong Hu himself couldn't believe it. Zhong Xinyan was ranked second among the top 10 inner sect disciples. She was also very beautiful and had many suitors in the sect. Yong Hu had fantasized about Zhong Xinyan before, but Zhong Xinyan's personality was cold and she rejected all of her suitors. He knew that the number 1 inner sect genius, Cha Long, had been rejected by Zhong Xinyan before. How could she take a fancy to a mere outer sect trash? Yes, I'm here to help him. If you really want to deal with him, then I'll have to make a move. As Zhong Xinyan spoke, she slowly pulled out the blue divine sword from her waist. Instantly, the sword intent spread out like ripples, and the surrounding air instantly became much colder. Yong Hu's expression finally changed. He knew that Zhong Xinyan was serious. She really planned to make a move. You only know how to hide behind a woman. Ni Ju will come out tomorrow. Since you've already accepted the life and death challenge, remember to come to the life and death arena. If you don't dare to come, break your arms and beg for forgiveness. Senior brother Ni Ju will be soft-hearted and spare your worthless life. After Yong Hu finished speaking, he left hatefully. On the other hand, the surrounding crowd was in an uproar. They all looked at Zhuowen with strange gazes. Zhong Xinyan's reputation in the Ascension sect was too great. She was a famous beauty and her talent was extremely high. She was the goddess in the hearts of many male cultivators. Zhong Xinyan, who had always been cold, actually stood up for a mere outer sect disciple at this moment. They were truly shocked. Are you meddling in other people's business? I can easily deal with this kind of trash. You coming out is just an unnecessary move. Zhuowen shook his head. He didn't have any intention of expressing his gratitude. He walked past Zhong Xinyan and walked to Tang Hongmiao's side. Is there something wrong with this guy's head? Senior sister Zhong saved his life, and this guy actually pretended to be virtuous. He even said that he was meddling in other people's business. He's really giving advice after the fact. Damn it, this trash is really showing off. I want to beat him to death. He really took advantage of me, and now he's pretending to be innocent. Many of the surrounding male disciples were filled with indignation. They felt that Zhuowen really didn't understand the situation, and still made sarcastic remarks. Zhong Xinyan's beautiful eyes looked at Zhuowen with a complicated expression. She recalled Zhuowen's heaven-defying performance in the crater and sighed softly. I was impulsive this time. Zhuanyanxue, I apologize to you. At this moment, many of the surrounding male disciples who didn't know what was going on were confused. What's going on? Zhong Xinyan kindly saved Zhuanyanxue, but not only did Zhuanyanxue not appreciate it, she even made sarcastic remarks. What made them even more confused was that Zhong Xinyan actually lowered her head and apologized to Zhuanyanxue. What was going on? Chapter 3758. Brother Zhua, that's Zhong Xinyan, the number 2 genius of the inner sect. She's both beautiful and powerful. She's publicly acknowledged as the number 1 beauty in the Ascension sect. She's already helped you so much, yet you're still so cold to her. Don't you think you're going overboard? Tang Hongmiao probed carefully on the way. Tang Hongmiao's attitude towards Zhuowen was becoming more and more cautious. The more he interacted with Zhuowen, the more he found Zhuowen to be unfathomable. Therefore, his attitude towards Zhuowen was no longer that of a friend. Instead, it was more like the attitude of a subordinate towards a superior. Zhuowen had long noticed the difference in Tang Hongmiao's attitude towards him, but he didn't say anything. She's more of a hindrance. If she didn't make a move, the one crippled would be Yong Hu. Zhuowen said calmly. Tang Hongmiao's eyes flickered. In fact, he felt that Zhuowen was boasting. Although Zhuowen's performance in the Golem Cave was very good, and he even dealt with Ni Kai and Zhou Ji, who were among the top 10 outer sect disciples, they were still outer sect disciples after all. He knew that there was a huge gap in strength between outer sect disciples and inner sect disciples. Take Yong Hu for example. His cultivation was already at the late stage of the heaven-trampling change realm, and he could defeat both Zhou Ji and Ni Kai with one hand. Since Tang Hongmiao had never seen Zhuowen fight with an inner sect disciple, he guessed that Zhuowen was only at the level of an ordinary inner sect disciple. There was still a gap between him and Yong Hu, let alone Niju, who was stronger than Yong Hu. Zhuowen naturally saw through Tang Hongmiao's thoughts. He smiled faintly and said, Brother Tang, you don't have to worry too much. The ones who should be afraid of tomorrow's battle should be Niju and the others. Tang Hongmiao forced a smile, but he was getting more and more worried. Zhuowen didn't try to comfort him. After tomorrow, Tang Hongmiao would truly understand his strength. As night fell, Zhuowen stayed in his residence without sleep. He was digesting the various divine abilities that he had fused in the Divine Abilities Pavilion today. Although these divine abilities were fused with the primordial soldier mantra and the primordial movement technique, Zhuowen himself had thoroughly comprehended them. He could use all the divine abilities at his fingertip. Of course, the might of these divine abilities was definitely far inferior to the Grand Mist weapon formula and Grand Mist movement technique. The next day, at dawn, someone kicked open Zhuowen's door. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes and found that the person who had come was Eternal Tiger, who had provoked him yesterday. "Trash, why haven't you come out yet? Senior brother Eniju is waiting for you in the life and death arena." Yonghu sneered. Zhuowen slowly stood up. When his cold gaze landed on Yonghu, the latter's body couldn't help but stiffen. By the time Yonghu reacted, Zhuowen had already arrived beside him at some point. "Why aren't you leading the way?" Zhuowen's cold voice came slowly. Yonghu's pupils shrank. He hadn't noticed when Zhuowen had arrived beside him. This guy Yonghu's hair stood on end. He realized that he had underestimated this person's strength. "I say, why aren't you leading the way?" Zhuowen spoke once again. A terrifying and overbearing aura burst out from his body and surged toward Yonghu like a tide. Plop! Yonghu sat on the ground. He was completely frightened by this aura. You! Yonghu swallowed his saliva. The fear in his heart could no longer be concealed. Although Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the spirit transformation stage, his strength was much stronger than Yonghu's. Furthermore, he had been training in the heavenly pit for the past few days. Thus, his body was releasing the terrifying pressure of the heavenly pit. "I don't like to repeat myself 3 times. Zhuowen spoke once again. Yonghu finally came back to his senses. He quickly stood up and obediently led the way. Brother Zhuo, you must be careful." Tang Hongmiao also walked out of his room. When he saw Yonghu bringing Zhuowen out, he spoke with a complicated gaze. "Brother Tang, follow me to the life and death arena." Zhuowen lightly smiled. Tang Hongmiao nodded and immediately agreed. He followed closely behind Zhuowen. Along the way, Zhuowen and Tang Hongmiao chatted casually. However, Yonghu, who was leading the way, did not say a word. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that Yonghu's body was faintly trembling, as if he was afraid of something. The journey to the life and death arena was extremely long for Yonghu. The life and death arena was located at the top of Tianju Cliff in the Ascension sect. Tianju Cliff was also a training ground for the Ascension sect. Furthermore, this place was much more popular than the Heavenly Pit. The main reason was that the difficulty of the Tianju Cliff's training was moderate. It was not as difficult as the Heavenly Pit, where it was easy to lose one's life. Therefore, most of the Ascension sect's disciples chose to train at Tianju Cliff. At this moment, Tianju Cliff was even more popular than before. This was because today was a special day. Someone was going to fight in the life and death arena. Although the life and death arena was set up on Tianju Cliff, very few people would fight in the life and death arena. After all, there were only a few disciples who had a life and death grudge. Once someone fought in the life and death arena, it would attract many disciples to watch. At the top of the cliff, on the life and death arena, Eniju sat cross-legged on a rock with his eyes closed. On his legs, there was a divine sword quietly lying on the ground. This is the first time in 3 years that someone is going to the life and death arena. Furthermore, one of them is the inner sect's 5th strongest expert, Eniju. This is really rare. Isn't that so? I also heard that Eniju's opponent is only an outer sect disciple. There's really no suspense in this battle. That outer sect disciple is really unlucky. He actually offended Eniju. This time, he's dead for sure. Many disciples around Tianju Cliff were discussing animatedly. They all had a pitiful attitude towards the outer sect disciple who had yet to appear. He could have offended anyone, but he actually offended one of the inner sect's top 10 experts, Eniju. With Big Brother Eniju here, that Zhuanyenshu will die even if she doesn't. Enai Kai's arms were wrapped in bandages as she hid on a rock wall around Tianju Cliff. Beside her were Furong and Lu Yongwang. As Wei Zi's injuries were too severe, he was still lying on the sickbed. This Zhuan Yanxue is overestimating herself. She really did accept the life and death challenge. Does she really think that she can compete with the 10 great inner sect disciples just because she defeated us? She's really looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. Furong echoed. Lu Yongwang's eyes were filled with arrogance as he said, "What a pity! Originally, I was willing to personally deal with that arrogant Zhuan Yanxue for junior sister Enai Kai. However, senior brother Enai Ju was still one step ahead of me. It's not good for me to compete with senior brother Enai Ju for this limelight." Enai Kai's beautiful eyes revealed a strange light as she looked at Lu Yongwang and said, "Senior brother Lu is right. With your Dao root, you will definitely be an influential figure in the Ascension sect in the future. Senior brother Lu, you don't have to trouble yourself to deal with a small fry like Zhuan Yanxue." Lu Yongwang's Dao root was of a higher level than Enai Ju's. He was extremely talented. After entering the inner sect, he received the attention of many elders. Enai Kai heard all this from Enai Ju. Therefore, she was trying her best to curry favor with Lu Yongwang. After all, Lu Yongwang's achievements in the future would definitely be above her brother's. Lu Yongwang faintly smiled as his eyes revealed a pleased expression. However, he didn't take a few more glances at Enai Kai. Instead, he focused most of his attention on a beautiful figure not far away from Tianju Cliff. That figure attracted the attention of many male disciples at Tianju Cliff. She was the inner sect's number 2 genius, Zhong Xinyan. Enai Ju slowly opened his eyes and looked down at the only path below Tianju Cliff. Chapter 3759. When Zhuowen and the other two arrived in front of the life and death stage, Enai Ju slowly stood up. He did not notice the unnatural expression on Yonghu's face as he focused all of his attention on Zhuowen, especially when he saw that Zhuowen's aura was only in the spirit transformation stage. A trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. Although this kind of cultivation was considered strong among the outer disciples, it was only ordinary among the inner disciples, not to mention Enai Ju. "I'm very surprised by your courage. Considering the huge gap between you and me, I told Yonghu to tell you, right? Break your arms and come here to apologize. Then, I will consider letting you live. Right now, this condition is still valid." Enai Ju's voice wasn't loud, but it was filled with an unquestionable arrogance. Senior brother Enai Ju is truly benevolent. He actually intends to let this person go. Break my arms? If Zhuan Yanxue really did that, then he would be crippled and wouldn't be able to stay in the Ascension sect anymore. But a bad life is better than a good death. I believe that Zhuan Yanxue will agree to this condition. Many disciples around the heavenly precipice heard Enai Ju's words and started to discuss with ridicule in their eyes. They were all waiting to see Zhuan Yanxue make a fool of herself. Zhong Xinyan silently watched all of this. After hearing Enai Ju's words, she gently shook her head. She was well aware of Zhuowen's strength. Even she might not be his opponent, not to mention Enai Ju. In Zhong Xinyan's opinion, Zhuowen's strength should be comparable to a core disciple. Zhuowen's gaze was calm as he stepped onto the life and death stage and said indifferently, "I only need one move to deal with trash like you. There's no need for me to apologize to you." As soon as he said those words, the surrounding noise instantly stopped. Strange gazes were cast onto Zhuowen's body. Those gazes were filled with doubt and pity. Immediately after, everyone roared with laughter. They felt that Zhuowen's words were simply too laughable. There should be a limit to boasting, right? Enai Ju laughed out loud, but his eyes turned even colder as he said, "You've got guts. You actually dare to boast in front of me. Are you tired of living?" Before Enai Ju could finish his sentence, His voice stopped abruptly as Zhuowen disappeared in front of him. By the time he reacted, Zhuowen had already appeared in front of him, and a sharp pain came from his chest. Zhuowen's right hand clenched into a fist. His entire body was emitting a strange purple light, and it landed right on his chest. Poochie! Eniju spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward like a falling leaf. Zhuowen, on the other hand, stood where he was. His entire body was shrouded in a strange purple light. What was even more strange was that there were illusory images of weapons floating around his body. The moment Eniju was thrown out, the illusory images of weapons around him shot out like arrows and blasted into Eniju's body. Eniju was still in midair, and he was still in a daze. When the illusory images of weapons landed on his body, a bloody mist burst out. The intense pain caused him to shriek miserably. When Eniju's shriek came to an abrupt end, his body exploded and turned into a rain of blood that sprinkled on the top of Tianjue Cliff and the Life and Death Ring. The entire area around Heavenly Precipice Cliff was silent. It was so quiet that it was too strange. All the spectating disciples stood there motionless, as if time had stopped. They quietly watched all of this, watching this unbelievable scene. Eniju, the genius disciple who was ranked 5th in the inner sect, was defeated in one move. Moreover, his body and soul were destroyed. He couldn't be more dead. So powerful, Zhong Xinyan stared blankly at the scene and couldn't help but mutter to herself. She had already thought that she had overestimated Zhuan Yanxue's strength, but now she realized that she had underestimated her by a long way. Enai Kai, Furong, and Lu Yongwang froze on the spot as if they had been possessed. The three of them couldn't accept such an outcome at all. How could Zhuan Yanxue be so powerful? She was too powerful. Yonghu, who was standing not far away from the Life and Death Ring, was already paralyzed on the ground. His body was trembling and even moving was difficult for him. He felt deep regret and fear. He actually wanted to find trouble with this jinx and cripple his limbs. Wasn't he digging his own grave? Fortunately, Zhong Xinyan stopped him. Otherwise, his current situation wouldn't be any better than Eniju's. Brother Zhua, is he really Brother Zhua? How did he become so powerful? Tang Hongmiao was stunned on the spot. He looked at the figure standing quietly on the Life and Death Ring with a complicated gaze. Zhuo Wen's eyes lit up. He had just used the primordial soldier formula. He had killed Eniju, who was at the advanced stage of the heaven-trampling change realm, without even using its full power. If he used its full power, he might be able to fight against an early-stage void god transformation realm cultivator. Moreover, the primordial soldier formula was far from its peak. It was only at the peak of the 3rd rank. When it evolved in the future, its power would be even more terrifying. At this moment, Zhuowen gave him a strange feeling. It was as if he was suffocating. Brother Eniju, no, Zhuan Yanxue, you bastard. How dare you kill Brother Eniju? He was an inner disciple. You killed an inner disciple. This is a capital offense. Death. Enai Kai seemed to have lost her mind as she pounced on the Life and Death Ring. She had completely collapsed and lost all rationality. The only thought left in her mind was to avenge Eniju. Furong and Lu Yongwang didn't even have time to react before Enai Kai had already jumped onto the Life and Death Ring. Once you're on the Life and Death Ring, your life is in my hands. Zhuo Wen's gaze was terrifyingly calm as he watched Enai Kai pounce on him. He then flicked his finger and a purple energy shot out. It shot out like a bullet and hit Enai Kai between her eyebrows. Enai Kai was like a kite with a broken string as she flew out and smashed into the ground below the Life and Death Ring. Blood spurted out from between her eyebrows. Her face was pale and she was on the verge of death. It was obvious that she wouldn't live for long. This person is so powerful and decisive. Many disciples at the Heavenly Cliff looked at Zhuo Wen with fear in their eyes. They had already labeled him as a dangerous person that they couldn't afford to offend. Chapter 3760. Yong, who was so scared that he almost suffocated. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Zhuowen. He knelt on the ground decisively and begged for mercy. Senior brother Zhuowen, Yong who knows his mistake. It was Yong who did not recognize Mount Tai yesterday. Please spare Yong who's dog life. Alright. I'll give you a chance to live. Now get on the life and death ring. I'll only cripple one of your arms and then get out of here, Zhuowen said calmly. He had never been someone who would settle things peacefully. Yong who had provoked him time and time again, so he would not treat it as if nothing had happened. Those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. Yong whose eyes flickered and he began to hesitate. Zhuowen's condition was too much. As an inner disciple who was second only to the top 10 experts, how could he be humiliated like this? Then cripple both of your arms and get out of here. Zhuowen saw that Yong who was hesitating and spoke again. His voice was filled with unquestionable authority. Yong who panicked. He knew that he could not hesitate anymore. Thus, under everyone's gaze, he rolled out of the ring and onto the ring. The disciples of Tianju Cliff were dumbfounded. This was Yong who. He had always been overbearing and ruthless towards others. He had never backed down. But today, under this person's order, he actually rolled onto the life and death ring. Zhuowen did not speak anymore and only looked at Yong who indifferently. Feeling Zhuowen's gaze, Yong who shouted loudly. In front of everyone, he channeled his broken divine power and destroyed the meridians in his hands. Pucci! Yong whose arms burst out into a bloody mist. Then, Yong who screamed and fell to the ground. His body was twitching. Now you can get out of here, Zhuowen said calmly. Yong whose eyes were filled with humiliation, but he still obediently followed Zhuowen's request and rolled down the life and death ring. Then, he left Tianju Cliff in a panic. At this moment, he was too embarrassed. How could he have the face to continue staying? Zhuowen stood on the life and death ring. His gaze casually swept and landed on Lu Yongwang and Furong. Lu Yongwang and Furong were both shocked. Their foreheads were full of sweat. The person in front of them was a fearless person. Even Ni Ju and Ni Kai had died in his hands, so they didn't dare to provoke him. Plop! Lu Yongwang hurriedly pulled Furong to kneel on the ground and said loudly, Senior Zhua, during the entrance test we were rude to you. Please don't take it to heart. We apologize to you now. Zhuowen silently watched Lu Yongxiang and Furong's actions. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth and said, The person you should be apologizing to isn't me, but Brother Tang. Lu Yongwang reacted very quickly. He pulled Furong towards Tang Hongmiao, knelt on the ground, and apologized in a low voice. Tang Hongmiao's gaze was complicated. He waved his hand, not intending to pursue Lu Yongwang's rude behavior. He was very clear that Lu Yong's willingness to apologize to him was not sincere. It was only because he was afraid of Zhuowen's power. Zhuowen surveyed the surroundings of Tianju Cliff, and all the disciples who met his gaze all lowered their heads, not daring to look him in the eye. Brother Tang, let's go. After scanning the surroundings, Zhuowen jumped down from the life and death arena. Under the respectful gazes of the crowd, he brought Tang Hongmiao and left Tianju Cliff openly. What a terrifying guy. This guy can't even be considered an outer court disciple. If he said he was a core disciple, there would be people who would believe him. Zhong Xinyan looked at Zhuowen's departing figure with a complicated expression as she muttered to herself. Tang Hongmiao silently followed behind Zhuowen, not saying a word the entire way. Brother Tang, do you know why Yong who was willing to listen to my orders and roll onto the life and death arena to break his own arms and roll off? And why did Lu Yongwang and Furong kneel down and apologize to me because of my gaze? Zhuowen did not even turn his head as he asked indifferently. Tang Hongmiao raised his head and stared at Zhuowen's back. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Because you're stronger than them." "Yes, you're right. I'm stronger than them, so I'm their rule. When you're strong enough, you'll be able to control the rules. Imperceptibly, there will be people who will get close to you, follow you, and even fear you. I know you feel inferior because my strength is stronger than yours. You don't even know how to get along with me. However, you just need to know one thing. You're my friend. This is the primordial technique. Take it and cultivate it. It will be the opportunity for you to quickly become stronger." Zhuowen stopped, took out a jade slip, and passed it to Tang Hongmiao. Recorded within the jade slip was the primordial technique that Zhuowen had created by referring to the primordial technique when he was in the lower realms. The might of the primordial technique was indeed far inferior to the original primordial technique, but it was much stronger than many cultivation techniques. Moreover, this cultivation technique did not have a requirement of Tao root. Even if one did not have Tao root, they could still cultivate it. Tang Hongmiao's Tao root was very inferior, so his progress in cultivating the Ascension Sex cultivation technique was very slow. He might not be able to break through the heavens in his lifetime. But the primordial technique was different. Cultivating this cultivation technique could rapidly increase one's comprehension ability. The more one cultivated it, the faster one's cultivation speed would be. It was an extremely terrifying cultivation technique. Of course, Zhuowen didn't give the primordial technique to Tang Hongmiao out of sympathy or any other emotions. It was also for the purpose of experimenting. He wanted to experiment and see if the primordial technique was suitable for others besides him to cultivate. Was it true that the worse one's Tao root was, the easier it would be to cultivate this cultivation technique? If it was true, then wouldn't it mean that mortals without Tao root would be the best choice to cultivate the primordial technique? If it was true, then perhaps the plan in Zhuowen's heart could be carried out. It was a plan that could truly allow him to gain a foothold in the outer realms and swiftly spread his forces. Because mortals were the most numerous in the outer realms, and they far outnumbered cultivators. Once the primordial technique could be cultivated by mortals, then Zhuowen would have the foundation to rope in all the mortals and establish a powerful force. And once this plan was realized, the entire structure of the outer realms would probably be broken by Zhuowen. Time gradually passed, and in the blink of an eye, 2 months had already passed. In these 2 months, Zhuowen had passed through the fourth group's sinkhole, and his cultivation had advanced to the peak of the spirit transformation stage. He was only half a step away from advancing to the heaven-trampling transformation stage. He had also successfully obtained the second proof token and entered the third level of the Mystical Abilities Pavilion. Moreover, he had integrated all the mystical abilities on the third level into the Primordial Soldier Mantra and Primordial Technique. This allowed the 2 mystical abilities to advance again and reach the peak of the fourth stage. Their power could be said to be extremely terrifying. Originally, Zhuowen thought that passing through the fourth group's sinkhole would definitely attract the attention of the sect's upper echelons. However, to Zhuowen's surprise, there was no movement from the sect. He vaguely guessed that it might have something to do with the old man guarding the sinkhole. It should be that the old man had concealed what happened in the sinkhole for him. As for what the old man's motive was, Zhuowen did not know. On the contrary, the old man's attitude towards him became more and more amiable, and he spoke more and more. Even the administrator of the Mystical Abilities Pavilion, Lian Yu, who had always had a bad attitude, had changed her attitude towards Zhuowen. To be more precise, she valued Zhuowen more. However, Zhuowen did not think too much about it. He had been immersed in his cultivation state, and it felt as if he did not pay attention to what was happening outside. Chapter 3761. The arrival of the Nangong family and the Murong family had shaken the entire Ascension sect. Regardless of whether it was the outer disciples, inner disciples, or core disciples, all of them were discussing the news. Zhuowen, on the other hand, was still cultivating in the sinkhole. He was trying to break through to the heaven transformation stage. Furthermore, he did not pay attention to gossip and was not good at socializing. Therefore, he was not aware of the news. Of course, even if he knew, he would not care. Although he knew that the Nangong family and the Murong family had come for him, unfortunately, he had entered the Ascension sect under an alias. Even if the Nangong family and the Murong family wanted him, the Ascension sect would not be able to find a disciple by the name of Zhuowen. On the main peak of the Ascension sect, the sect leader, Li Yuanfeng, had gathered the elders to discuss countermeasures. Sect leader, the Murong family and the Nangong family have sent people here at the same time. It seems that the two families have discussed this beforehand. Furthermore, I heard that the Murong family's leader is Elder Ingyan, while the Nangong family's leader is Nangong Haoge. I'm afraid that they've come with ill intentions. An elder stood up. His gaze was unpleasant as he spoke in a deep voice. Since this elder had started the discussion, the other elders present began to discuss spiritedly and expressed their opinions. Li Yuanfeng gestured for them to keep quiet and sighed softly. The Murong family and the Nangong family have sent people here because of a disciple of our Ascension sect. It's said that this disciple is audacious and has stolen the star weapon fragments from the two families. In order to avoid being hunted down by the two families, he hid in our Ascension sect. The crowd burst into an uproar when they heard this. What? No wonder the two families have mobilized so many people. So they're here to catch a thief. This thief is really despicable. He actually hid in our Ascension sect. Sect leader, we can't let this guy off so easily. The elders present all had different opinions, but their thoughts were the same. They had to find that thief and stop him from slandering the Ascension Gate. After all, both the Nangong family and the Murong family were not inferior to the Ascension sect in terms of power and foundation. In fact, they were even slightly stronger. Now that the two families had joined forces, the higher-ups of the Ascension sect were panicking. After all, the Ascension sect was no match for the power of the two families. Thus, when they learned that the two clans had joined hands and did not come to target the Ascension School, they heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. By the way, Sect Master, who are the people the two clans want? Someone's words immediately attracted everyone's attention. This person's problem was also their problem. From the messages that Elder Ingyan and Nangong Haoge sent me, I heard that this person's name is Zhuowen. This is his profile picture. If you know this person, report it to me immediately. As Li Yuanfeng spoke, he took out a crystal ball and projected a clear image on it. The figure of a young man with a calm expression was displayed on the virtual image. The gazes of all the elders fell on the projection. Only one person's expression changed slightly when he heard Zhuowen's name, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. She was Elder Yuqi. Back in Yunjin Ridge, she had competed with Zhuowen and lost to Zhuowen. That Zhuowen actually has an astral weapon fragment in his hands. Who exactly is he? Elder Yuqi pondered in her heart and was filled with curiosity about Zhuowen's identity. Back then, Zhuowen had used the half-moon divine fire spear to defeat her in the end. He was clearly only in the divine transformation of the fetus realm, but he could possess a level 4 heaven-breaking divine weapon. Moreover, he could use such a divine weapon beyond his level. It was truly unbelievable. After she brought Lu Miaozhen away, she had actually asked Lu Miaozhen about Zhuowen's background. According to Lu Miaozhen, Zhuowen had just come from the lower realm and was saved by her. He was unfamiliar with the 100 domains outside the lower realm. As for more information, Lu Miaozhen was not too sure. However, Elder Yuqi guessed that Zhuowen did not come from the lower realm. This person's background was definitely not simple. Moreover, he was so bold that he dared to steal the astral weapon fragments from the Murong and Nangong families. How could a living being from the lower realm have such courage and strength? From Elder Yuchi's point of view, it should be an excuse made up by Zhuowen. That Zhuowen has the token that I gave him. If he really comes to the Ascension sect, he will definitely bring my token to report. However, I haven't received any news during this period of time. I'm afraid that Zhuowen is not in the Ascension sect. Elder Yuchi's eyes flickered. She did not intend to provide this information to Li Yuanfeng. Although Zhuowen's attitude was not very good back then, and he had even defeated her, she did not have a good impression of him. However, her impression of Zhuowen was not bad. At least, Zhuowen knew how to repay kindness. He was even more courteous to Lu Miaozhen, who had saved his life. From Elder Yuchi's point of view, since Zhuowen was not in the Ascension sect, the people from the Murong and Nangong families would naturally not make things difficult for the Ascension sect. When the time came, they would naturally leave. 3 days later, 2 giant divine ships soared through the sky and arrived near the Sky Dragon mountain range, where the Ascension sect was located. Elder Ingyan, I heard that when you led people to encircle and annihilate that Zhuowen last time, you were covered in dust and dirt and almost died. That was truly humiliating. At the front of the Nangong family's divine ship's deck, a tall middle-aged man clad in armor had his hands crossed in front of his chest. He cast a sidelong glance at an old man who was similarly standing at the front of the divine ship's deck and spoke in an ambiguous tone. This middle-aged man was naturally the leader of the Nangong family's team, Nangong Hauga. As for the old man at the front of the Murong family's divine ship's deck, he was naturally Elder Ingyan, who had failed to encircle and annihilate Zhuowen last time. Elder Ingyan's face darkened. He coldly said, Nangong Hauga, no one will treat you as a mute if you don't speak. If you were to face the might of a rank 2 astral weapon fragment, would you be able to remain unscathed? Nangong Hauga coldly smiled and said, I'm not like you. Our Nangong family has already made preparations to deal with that brat. If we want to deal with a rank 2 astral weapon, we can only use a rank 2 astral weapon. Elder Ingyan coldly snorted and said, Do you think that only your Nangong family can take out a rank 2 astral weapon? Our Murong family has also made preparations for this. Also, our mission this time is to bring back that Zhuowen. As for the things on this person's body, how about our 2 families decide the ownership according to the old rules? Nangong Hauga grinned and said, There's nothing we can do about it. After all, our family's patriarch has already reached an agreement with your Murong family. Nangong Hauga also understood that if they were both rank 2 astral weapons, it wouldn't be a simple matter to quickly determine the victor. However, if 2 rank 2 astral weapons were to deal with 1 rank 2 astral weapon, then they would basically win. They had already anticipated that after Zhuowen's whereabouts were exposed, they would definitely fight to the death. If any of them were to face him alone, they would inevitably have to fight bitterly. However, if the 2 of them were to join hands, it wouldn't be a problem at all. Elder Ingyan, if the Ascension sect were to know that Zhuowen possesses a rank 2 astral weapon, do you think they would make a move to snatch him? Nangong Hauga asked with a frown. The message they sent to the Ascension sect's patriarch mentioned that Zhuowen possessed a rank 1 astral weapon fragment, but it was only a rank 1 astral weapon fragment. The Ascension sect also possessed a few rank 1 astral weapon fragment. Therefore, the Ascension sect wouldn't take the risk of offending the 2 families and monopolize Zhuowen. Chapter 3762. Although the Ascension sect was one of the 5 sects, it was ranked last among the 5 sects. It did not have a rank 2 astral weapon fragment. If they knew that Zhuowen had a rank 2 astral weapon fragment, they would definitely snatch it even if they had to fall out with the 2 sections. Haha, the Ascension sect wouldn't dare to do that. They don't have a rank 2 astral weapon. So what if they snatch this rank 2 astral weapon? Can he withstand the wrath of our 2 sects? Moreover, if the Ascension sect really snatches it, it will give our 2 sects an excuse to fight the Ascension sect. As long as Li Yuanfeng isn't a fool, he won't attack even if he knows that Zhuowen has a rank 2 astral weapon fragment. Elder Ingyan smiled faintly. That's true. Nangong Haoge said faintly. At this moment, the clouds surrounding the Ascension sect gradually dispersed, revealing the magnificent mountain gate of the Ascension sect. Elder Ingyan and Nangong Haoge knew that the Ascension sect had removed the protective mountain array after knowing of their arrival. A group of people walked out from the mountain gate of the Ascension sect. The person in the lead was naturally the sect master of the Ascension sect, Li Yuanfeng. Brother Ingyan, Brother Haoge, sorry to keep you waiting. Please come in. Li Yuanfeng made an inviting gesture to the 2 of them. Elder Ingyan and Nangong Haoge kept the divine ship and followed Li Yuanfeng into the Ascension sect with their respective teams. Along the way, many disciples of the Ascension sect observed this group of people from afar. They knew that only the Murong family and Nangong family could make Li Yuanfeng personally come out to welcome them. Sect Master Li, it has been many years since we last met. Your cultivation has improved again. Elder Ingyan started to chat with Li Yuanfeng. He sensed Li Yuanfeng's aura and realized that it was even stronger than his. His gaze immediately turned serious. Haha, Brother Ingyan, you are too polite. Your improvement is the greatest. My improvement is still a little lacking compared to yours, Li Yuanfeng said with a smile. Nangong Haoge was a little impatient. He said softly, Sect Master Li, you should know why we are here, right? We have come here to ask for someone. May I know if there is someone called Zhuowen in your Ascension sect? Li Yuanfeng was a little embarrassed. When the 2 patriarchs sent me the message, I immediately ordered the elders to investigate the names of everyone in the sect. I'm really sorry, but we didn't find anyone called Zhuowen in the sect. Elder Ingyan and Nangong Haoge exchanged glances, their expressions not looking too good. Sect Leader Li, both of our sects have already investigated. Back then, Zhuowen did indeed come for your Ascension sect. Moreover, ever since he entered your Ascension sect, that Zhuowen has never appeared anywhere else. Sect Leader Li, is it because you didn't investigate carefully enough, causing the results to be a little off? Elder Ingyan said with a smile. Li Yuanfeng frowned slightly. He was a little displeased. From his point of view, it wasn't a big deal that Zhuowen had stolen a rank 1 astral weapon from the Murong family and Nangong family. Weren't the people that the 2 sects had arranged a little too much? He had indeed sent people to investigate carefully. There was no such person as Zhuowen. However, these 2 people actually didn't believe him and even questioned him. They didn't put him, the sect leader, in their eyes at all. Elder Ingyan, Li Yuanfeng, will definitely not be careless about the things that your 2 sects have requested of me. If you still don't believe me, I can't do anything about it. Li Yuanfeng's tone was a little cold. Elder Ingyan and Nangong Haoge exchanged glances. Nangong Haoge secretly transmitted his voice. From Li Yuanfeng's tone, it doesn't seem like he's lying. Could it be that Zhuowen really isn't in the Ascension sect? Elder Ingyan said in a deep voice, that's not very possible. When that Zhuowen entered the Ascension sect, the Nangong family sent out many people to monitor him. No one saw that Zhuowen left the Ascension sect. Furthermore, before coming, I had already asked Spirit Master Yen to make a prediction. That Zhuowen is indeed still in the Ascension sect. Nangong Haoge nodded and said, I also asked Spirit Master Yen to make a prediction. That Zhuowen is indeed still in the Ascension sect. Could it be that this Li Yuanfeng really dares to lie to us? Li Yuanfeng wouldn't go so far as to offend our two sects for one person. Right now, the most likely thing should be that Zhuowen has entered the Ascension sect, but he's using another identity. Elder Ingyan said. Nangong Haoge narrowed his eyes and said with a slight headache, if that's the case, then it's really troublesome. There are so many people in the Ascension sect. How are we going to find that Zhuowen if he sneaks in? Elder Ingyan slightly raised the corner of his mouth and said, we don't need to find him. That Zhuowen will take the initiative to find us. Nangong Haoge looked at Elder Ingyan in astonishment and asked, what do you mean? I've already understood. That Zhuowen killed Murong Fugue and Murong Rui consecutively for the sake of Yunjin territory. It can be seen that he's a righteous person. And in the Ascension sect, there's a benefactor who saved his life. As long as we have that person in our hands, then release the news. That Zhuowen will definitely do something. Elder Ingyan smiled faintly and said. Nangong Haoge said with some disbelief, is there really such a person in this world? That guy is really willing to give up his life for the sake of friendship? Elder Ingyan smiled and said, even if that guy doesn't dare to come, he'll definitely give himself away. At that time, with Li Yuanfeng's assistance, we can also find out who the real Zhuowen is. Isn't this killing two birds with one stone? Nangong Haoge nodded and felt that Elder Ingyan's plan was not bad. Then who is that
These two people
had already made Li Yuanfeng unhappy
Nangong
when
Haoge
they came
asked.
up to ask for a person.
I only know that she's
now that the
called
person
Lu
they
Miaozhi.
wanted hadn't been
She's
found,
an intersect
and they actually
disciple
wanted
who just
another
joined
person.
the Ascension
This was